today?
Not that I know of right
Okay.
now, but they would start in, well, yeah, because August to be over with,
Yeah.
yeah.
So do you want to keep, I have no problem keeping the item on, because if you want to lease that plaza, I think we should.
Mr. Campbell, or somebody from legal? John, is anybody pushing us on the lease there or anything that you know of? I know one of the,
No, for the City Attorney's Office, John Shipman, Deputy City Attorney. I'm not familiar with anybody pushing for it currently at this point in time, and I think staff is in the process of putting together a broader plan that might be one component of.
okay. All right, yeah, we'll just go ahead and pull it for right now.
Okay. And then on item, I think staff had told the aquatics and the soccer folks that J2 and 3 was going to be heard at 2.
At 2?
Yes.
Okay,
We could get that there.
that wasn't on mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Chair will entertain a motion of approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Have a
Second.
motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Public comment? Stuart Mackey? Yes, sir. Identify yourself for the record. No, it's not working. Hold on a minute. Is there a button on there?
Yes, my name's
That's
Stuart
it.
Mackay,
Okay.
and I have some geothermal property out in Hazen, above Hazen, and we had to do a search to make sure we weren't bothering anybody when we drilled. And so we used Reno, Sparks, Washoe County to find out whether the water rights and things were being handled right. And on the average, when they dedicate a water right for a building, it's 325,000 gallons of water. And we found out that on the average, the people of your community use 100,000 gallons a year, but they do not receive any other remuneration back, and it does not go back in the Truckee River. So we're wondering if everybody would write a letter to the FBI and find out where this money is going, because they should be given back at least, they're asking 27,000 to 50,000 an acre foot per year. And this has been over the last 10 years. So I could see, I can't see anybody having to declare bankruptcy or losing their homes in this area, because the cities and the counties through TROA and through the water departments are not paying the people for the water that they're using. It's going into Chalk Bluff, being distributed. There might be a few tailings that go into the Truckee River, but nothing goes back. So obviously they're using everybody's water rights since 1980, and the people who had homes before 1980 aren't losing any of their water rights because they were ground. So what are you guys doing? Are you paying these people back or not? I mean, 2/3 of the water rights are being used by the cities and county, yet I never hear of anybody being paid back. And that's hundreds of millions of dollars you owe those people. This is unbelievable. And the other thing is this Arizona situation where the U.S. government ruled, okay, how can you guys deal with the Indian reservation when they consider themselves a nation upon themselves? Okay, they are exempt from dealing with you folks, so I can't see how they have any contracts with you because of this federal ruling. So how is that Truckee River going into Pyramid Lake legally? But I think everybody in this community needs to write a letter to the FBI to find out where this money has disappeared to, because every person should be getting at least $100,000, $200,000.
Okay, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
input. Mark Merkel?
Can you hear me now? Ah, that's good. Thank you. I want to explain that I'm reading from this because I suffer from a traumatic brain injury, and I sometimes forget what I'm going to say. I just like I'm doing that ramble on. Hi, my name is Mark, and my mission in life is to educate students and the community about what happens when you get in the car with a drunk driver. I spent through Mark's pad, I hope to prevent others from making the same mistake and suffering the same consequences that I have. I began drinking at 8. My brothers and I engaged in a lot of risky business behavior. Growing up, at age 24, I was drunk and I got in the car with the drunk driver who was my brother crashed the car and it rolled 8 times and landed on my head. I was pronounced dead at the scene, but they were able to bring me back at the hospital. I was in a coma for a month. Once I regained consciousness, I spent 5.5 months learning to talk, which I don't do very well. And walk, which I don't do very well. And eat. And even all over again due to my traumatic brain injury. I now must use a walker and have people help clean and cook. It's hard for people to understand me when I talk, and I have a hard time controlling my impulses. I like ladies. I'm sorry, Miss. Oh. My life has completely changed as a result of the crash. It left me unable to drive, find gainful employment, have a relationship, and do basic tasks for myself. I have hurt my family and my friends and have made their lives harder. I do the best I can. I have to read. I do this, so only take a second.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
It's a good message. Appreciate it very much. Mr. Sam Dene.
Sam Dene, I am the Encyclopedia of Reno Government. First of all, I want to make a quick comment about this Hot August Nights request. They're requesting, it looks like almost a pittance of money, of a little bit of help for one of the most important programs that we have in the community during the year, special events. And I do have to make a disclosure that this year, the Two Wild Yankees band will be one of the feature entertainment acts during that event, philanthropically speaking. So you will not be donating any of this money to me. It'll be going to Hot August Nights. Anyway, you know, I was reading the Reno Gazette Regurgitator this morning, and actually yesterday, and they're quoting some stories that came from the New York Times and the Los Angeles Times, basically denigrating Reno, Nevada. And I'm a little bit, well, I'm definitely ashamed of the Reno Gazette Regurgitator for not being more adamant in defense of our wonderful city. I know that I come to this podium quite often and castigate you folks and other folks for a lot of blundering, but all in all, this is a wonderful city. It is, I still live here, otherwise I would have moved away. It's a wonderful city. I was sitting down with coffee with a couple of my pals this morning. We went over this story and we were wondering why the Reno Gazette didn't do any particular amount of rebutting. So we just came up with a few good things about Reno that should be pointed out, that make Reno a world-class city. In no order of preference, we have arguably the best weather in all of America. We have fishing and hunting that nobody can match. We've got skiing of all kinds. We've got a top college football team. We've got one of the best AAA baseball teams. They're number 2 in the whole nation for AAA baseball. World-class restaurants. We've got the Sparks Marina, almost a miracle. And of course, we really do have the best special events in America when you add them all up. We've got Hot August Nights. We've got Street Vibrations. We've got the Reno Air Races and the balloon races, and I could go on, but I only have a minute left. And now we have Apple Computer coming to town. What's with that? They didn't mention that. What's with that? Apple Computer. And last but not least, and this was no order of preferences, last but not least, we have Harry Reid. And we have Sam Dene. No other city has Sam Dene. As I close out, I do have to juxtapose against these wonderful things. I do have to juxtapose a few things. We have the worst vote-stealing group of traitors in all of America, as proven by the fact that Sam has never been elected to one of these positions. Sam, Air Force Academy graduate, impeccable background. And number 2, we've got arguably the nation's worst, anybody want to guess what I'm going to say? The worst media in America.
Thank you very much. All right, now we'll go to cash disbursements. None? Any?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Have motion second. All in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. D1 has been pulled. Presentation on the Collin Fire restoration efforts.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, and Assistant City Manager. I'm Kyle West, the Safety and Training Manager for the city, and I served as the Incident Co-Commander for the Collin Fire Burned Area Emergency Response, or BEAR team, along with Linda Nelson, formerly of Washoe County Parks. You will hear from Linnell Garfield Qualls, a City of Reno hydrologist and a critical member of our restoration team. As you remember, the Collin Fire started the evening of November 18th, 2011 in southwest Reno. Fire crews did an outstanding job of minimizing damage to lives and homes. What you might not be aware of is the work that has gone into returning our burned open space to a vibrant community resource. This presentation is about those efforts. The BEAR team originally met under Kurt Ladapow, Washoe County Fire Services Coordinator, and the team was organized in this fashion, as demonstrated on this slide. The BEAR team was locally made up of staff from both the City of Reno and Washoe County. The teams coordinated not based on jurisdiction, but on skills and knowledge, the same as our fire suppression crews.
Good afternoon. Again, I am Linnell Garfield Qualls, hydrologist. You might remember the Collin Fire statistics. 1,946 acres burned, 42 homes were damaged or lost. Immediately after the fire, BEAR team members met and field teams began to serve the burned areas like you see on these slides. The teams prioritized emergency response locations based on severity, hazard to public health and safety, stormwater runoff, and risk of erosion. Public Works crews designed and built 9 check dams in Manzanita Canyon's bottom immediately, such as the one you see in the top picture, being field fit by engineering and maintenance staff. As crews backed their equipment down the channel, removing it from the canyon, they also reestablished the active channel bottom, something that was critical to restoring the canyon. The last picture you see here on the right shows a check dam after just a 1-inch storm. As you can see, this dam was essential in holding back sediment in place, which could have been washed downstream in our winter storms. The needs of the community were supported well by the BEAR system. After evaluations, all these groups brought their best to the table and worked together effectively at this critical time. Without BEAR organization, this might not have been such a success. For example, the Nevada Land Conservancy applied for grants in such a way to restore both public and private lands, not an option available to city staff. Our standard process for the Nevada Land Conservancy and City of Reno to begin restoration included restoration plans and specifications designed for 2 different contracts, 2 memorandums of understanding developed and signed, rights of entry for all public lands sought and signed, and the bid process for each of 2 contracts. Of great concern to the BEAR team were the 70% plus slopes beneath the steamboat ditch. Without vegetation, these slopes became very unstable, and the team moved quickly to initiate contract work. However, protecting the steamboat ditch from collapsing and clogging up the Truckee River was not included in the emergency declaration. Although we project managers moved quickly to initiate the contract work, immediate steps were necessary due to impending winter storms, even before the legal agreements and spec documents could be put into place. Once check dams were installed by staff, as you see up here in the top left picture, the Truckee River Fund grants came through. With these funds, the team went out to bid with 2 different projects. Soil Tech was selected for both contracts in Manzanita Canyon. In the middle photo, you can see bright green, fresh hydro seeding with erosion control logs applied on the steep slopes. And on the right, you see the success, the bucolic growth that is now taking back over the canyon. The only thing missing from this picture is a big swallowtail butterfly from feeding on those milkweed blossoms. City staff and Land Conservancy staff were involved in contract management and regular inspections. In the inset picture, you see up close that this looks a little bit like paper mache once it's dried out in the canyon, but it's rather made up of native seed mix, paper mulch, water, and glue. The Nevada Land Conservancy and city staff worked through some challenges on this project. Our standard process provided obstacles rather than expediting restoration. BEAR teams typically organize after each fire event, so there is no local standing team and setup time is needed. And our crew gratefully drew from what had been done in other fires with help from other agencies and specialists. Despite how scary the fire was, it could have been much worse for our community once it was put out. We had very mild conditions this winter. We did not lose those steep banks beneath Steamboat Ditch and its access road. One of our co-commanders, Linda Nelson, retired from the county immediately after the fire and was picked up by the Land Conservancy to provide consistency in project management. Grant funding was available and awarded for most of the work completed, but it might not be available in the future. Without any one of these conditions, the restoration would have looked very different. This project has been a great success for our community. On the left, you see there are donated riparian plants that had been planted by volunteers in the Dry Spring Canyon. To offset the year's dry conditions, staff had water rights temporarily transferred downstream from Steamboat Ditch. And on the right, you see the willow wattles coming back to life and scorched plants growing back from their roots. We now have an opportunity to plan. Before the next disaster, will we be able to coordinate a BEAR team? Can we be proactive? We may have different staff next time. Extremely dry conditions represent higher risk of fire and greater impact of storms on erosion and water quality. Restoration is critical in our community for lessening fire's effects. The protection of our community's land, water, and economic resources requires planning before the fire. We are seeking a cooperative agreement with the Nevada Land Conservancy, which will allow the city to continue acting as leaders in our community. We intend to improve the availability and speed of obtaining resources to restore public lands and assist private landowners in coming years. And we would like to bring back this agreement to City Council for approval after summer break.
We have many organizations and individuals that deserve recognition for participating in this project, And we want to thank you for supporting and helping us plan for proactive community protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Anybody got any questions or anything? Great job, guys. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. Any items you want to pull for discussion? Mr. Fraser.
Mr. Mayor, E1A1, please.
E1A1. Any others? E16. Any others? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Excuse me, Steve Hardesty, Public Works. We would like to have E9 pulled, so we're going to make a couple of minor changes to it.
E9.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any others?
Move to approve as...
Have a motion, have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, I have a speaker. Sorry about that. Mr. Dene. Then I'll call for the vote.
Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government. I'm here to speak on the consent agenda, which is a situation where they're going to vote on a whole bunch of items in a row. And the thing that piqued my interest the most about this consent agenda, it's a good thing, because I'm roughly adding up the amount of money you're going to be able to spend on various projects, and I'm not speaking for or against the projects, but apparently there's still a substantial amount of money left in the city coffers for an awful lot of projects. Here's $260,000, there's $500,000, there's $500,000. I mean, some big projects, and that's wonderful that we have that amount of money, enough money left to continue with these apparently important projects. I did want to make one quick comment on item E2, where you're going to approve an agreement with, and I'm in favor of this, an agreement between AthenaOnline.com to provide Reno residents access to videos and articles from online situations. And I'm hoping that part of the video capability that they are going to provide will be the replay of these city council meetings, so that citizens will have easy access to seeing at least the Sam Dene part of these meetings. Last but not least, I did, very briefly as I segue out, I briefly have to say I left out maybe the most important thing of all. Reno, Nevada has arguably the best fire department in all of America, along with, thank you, along with one of the best police departments, because it was the fire department and police department that saved all of those homes and lives. So I'm sorry I left them out.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. For the record, John Flansburgh, Public Works Director. The item Steve was requesting a pull was not E9, which was the Tum Wharf contract for paving. It was actually E8, which was a temporary lease agreement
E8.
for Sierra Nevada Journeys.
Okay.
I'll
Yeah,
amend the-
now we haven't,
I'll amend the motion, Mr. Mayor, or do we have to vote? for
well, I hadn't called a
reconsideration?
vote yet, so,
I'll amend the motion and include E9 and strike E8.
all right. Is that okay on the second? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Fraser, E1A1.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a disclosure on E1A1. Mr. Vasquez was a political consultant. It's been quite some time now for my city council campaign, I believe in '04 and '08. I have no financial interest in this transaction. This is just merely a disclosure for the record, and feel that I can vote on this matter.
I'm just so happy he's found work.
Same
Okay.
disclosure, Mr. Mayor.
Same disclosure, okay. Any other? All right,
Second?
have a motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Guston? Dorich, E8?
E8's staffs, Mr. Mayor.
Or, who is E16?
E16 was...
Dorich, that's right, E8 staff. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Steve Hardesty, Public Works. There was a few changes in the course between the time that we submitted our staff report and the council meeting. A couple of minor changes to the license agreement before you. The outfit that's going to move into the south side school is moving from the north side to the south side now, which will increase the square footage of the agreement from 1,314 to 1,500 square feet. And the monthly rent will go from $14.39 to $16.25. And instead of moving in on the 1st of August, it'll be the 15th of August, after Parks and Recreation move over to this building.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Dorch.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's just I had opposed the funding for this during the budget process, so I just want to stay consistent. So,
Move to approve.
Have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. So the vote 6-1. All right. We'll go to public hearings. Item F1. Madam Secretary, have all the notices been sent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, proper notice was given. We received one letter in opposition from Kimberly Rodemeyer.
Okay.
Which one is this?
All right. Any comments? Staff got anything?
Claudia Hanson, Planning and Engineering Manager. I did amend the staff report to address the changes within the handbook. I'm available for questions, and I can go over any other issues that you may have on this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to disclose that I did meet with Mr. DiLoretto about this and talked about some of the questions I had, and he answered some, so I want to just put those out publicly. He told me the purpose of the helipad was that the county is already using one out there for mosquito abatement, so this is going to permit that. And also some of the laboratory and other uses are being done on the ranch that is currently out there, so it's more uses that are already existing. And is there something in this one that limits it to the ones that are in existence? He said that's what the purpose of those were, to allow the ones that are already in existence.
On the helipad was actually, I believe those were both already uses allowed. So the lab is already allowed in 3 of the zoning districts, and it was allowed in public facility with a special use permit, and we've changed that to accessory. So you would have to have one of those larger uses.
Because that's already right.
Right, so that's what clarified that. But it's already an allowed use in the other districts. And then the helipad was already allowed as accessory in mixed development and public facility. So that was no change to what it already is.
And then we also got an email, and I'll say it publicly, it was one of those attorney clients, that the attorney said that we can indeed make these modifications. So my questions have been answered.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No
Yes,
problem.
Ms. Fred.
Just, Mr. Mayor, same disclosure, because I did, along with Councilman Iazzi, have several questions on this. This was more a cleanup by staff on the allowed uses, and also just clarifying that the city can open up any PUD at any time. So I appreciate getting those answers back.
Good. Any other questions or anything? Legal counsel, got something?
Marilyn Craig, Deputy City Attorney. That memo to council is open, and there is a copy out on the table if anyone's interested.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Chair will entertain a motion,
Did
Mr.
you close
Isaac.
the public hearing, Mr. Mayor? I don't know if you closed it.
No, I didn't close the public hearing. Have no public comment. I'll close the public hearing or bring it to the table.
Do you want me to do this, Sharon, or do you want to?
Zadra, it's your ward.
Yeah, move to approve.
Both of ours.
Thank you.
I have a motion.
Or
Do I-
uphold the recommendations of the Planning Commission.
Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. All right, now we go to ordinance adoption, item H1.
Resolution number 7744,
Resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to execute purchase orders or required contracts for the purchase of materials and equipment for street and traffic signal maintenance and repairs pursuant to Chapter 332 of the Nevada Revised Statutes for fiscal year 2012, 2013.
Move to adopt.
Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item H2.
This is a staff report for
Mr. Mayor, the items under H1, H2 through H9 would normally what would happen is we would have a resolution that would come to you in one of your first meetings, and then we'd have all the purchases come to you at a subsequent meeting. This one just happens to have them together. That's why these would normally be consent agenda type items. Just shows those are the type of materials we have, what the budget that we had for each of those materials, and that we will purchase those through our standard procedures.
H what through what?
H2 through H9.
H9. Can we make a motion to accept staff recommendation on all those?
Yes, Susan Ball-Rose, Deputy City Attorney. Yeah, if you would just note in your motion that it encompasses all of those items.
I'll make the motion to approve staff recommendation on H3, H4, H5, H6, H7, H8, and H9.
Second.
And H2.
Second, and just a question of John, I understand because when I read this is for materials for next year, obviously. And is this from last year, were you accurate? Did you have to come back and have more money for materials, or it depends, I guess, on weather conditions, but how accurate was your forecast last year?
Last year we were accurate, and we did not have to come back to ask for any additional funds. Obviously, in a heavy snow year, we may have to come back and ask for additional funds for salt or sand, those types of things, but we were within our budget on all those items last year.
Great. Thanks, John.
All right, I have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item H10, staff report.
H10, Resolution Number 7745, a resolution accepting dedicated property at the intersection of Moana Lane and South Virginia Street.
Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. H11.
Resolution Number 7746, a resolution adopting and approving a cooperative agreement for mutual aid between the City of Reno and the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District.
Move to adopt.
Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Item H12.
Resolution Number 7747, resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to execute, deliver, and record any documents that may be required for the city to purchase and rehabilitate eligible properties under the Neighborhood Stabilization Program 1 and 3, funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Move to adopt.
Have a second. Have a second discussion, Mr. Brazel.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to point out on H12 and 13, how much the Housing Authority has done. If you see the properties, we should probably have a presentation, because out instead, I mean, they are really changing neighborhoods, rehabilitating, and we had that opening of the 100th home that had been purchased, but this is very good, and working, the council working with the Housing Authority, how many of these homes have truly been rehabilitated? I mean, I know we've been getting bad national press, but this is some of the stuff that's really good news in our community.
All right.
For the record, Maureen McKissick responding for Jody Royal Goodwin, who's in Washington attending a homeless conference. The item before you today under H12 and H13 relates to the city's portion of the, but we would be happy to come back and do a presentation on the other aspects that we did with the Reno Housing Authority. Thank you.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. H13.
Resolution Number 7748, resolution authorizing the Housing and Neighborhood Development Administrator to execute offers to purchase real property for Neighborhood Stabilization Programs 1 and 3 as authorized by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Have motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance introductions.
Okay.
None. We go to parks. I'm sorry we set a time certain for you guys. So now you have to wait a while. We could move it.
That's 2 o'clock.
It's at 1 o'clock. No, once we've said 1 o'clock, we have to.
That was, I think staff had told him that time. That's the problem.
No, it was oh, no, excuse me. I'm thinking of 5, J2. No.
Okay. Yeah.
J2 that's set for 2 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay. J3 is set for 2 o'clock. Item J5, 1 o'clock.
I can reopen up some other issues, Mr. Libby.
Never mind, Mr.
Okay.
Izzy. You're out of control. Boards and commission appointments.
Finally figured that out.
Appointments, Ward 1.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I want to make a point here. I didn't get this until this morning, and there are 2 people applying for that, and it's an important position, obviously, and I have not had time to even talk to either person, so I'm going to continue this until our first meeting in August. But
Okay.
it would be appreciated if we got these in advance, certainly.
Okay. Ward 4. Continue. Urban Forestry.
Mr. Mayor, I wish to appoint Doris May Weber to the board.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Financial Advisory Board.
Just continue it, Mr. Mayor.
Continue.
Yeah.
Mayor and the council identification items for Reno Sunday Council meeting. Any new items you want to put on in the future? Okay, we'll move on to item, any liaison reports?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just want to share good news again for our community. This morning, we welcomed another major data processing center to our community. The same people who brought us Apple a couple of weeks ago have also brought us NJVC, and they'll be employing initially about 20 people and soon 45 people, making $90,000 a year. They'll take up over a couple of years. They'll be utilizing 2,200 acres, and they're providing major high-security data processing cloud types of operations for major clients, including the United States military. And they're located out in the South Meadows in the business park, out on Professional Way. So another major employer and kind of that direction that we need to go with economic development in our city. Welcome to our city.
That's super. Thank you. Any other reports or anything you want to bring up? Now we'll go to,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just under agenda items before I forget, I know we don't meet till August. Can I get an update on the trees on McCarran with the widening of McCarran over in the southeast section of town? We had that presentation. I just want to hear from RTC where we are on the replanting of the trees.
okay. Well, nobody's here, but we'll get a report on that. All right, update on item M1, Chief.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Manager, members of the council. I've got 3 items I'd like to bring to the attention of the council. As mentioned last week, we did submit a true-up explanation justification letter regarding the amount that the city of Reno feels is owed to them from the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. To date, we've received no response. As council is aware, the city manager submitted a memorandum to the council with respect to an agreed joint meeting with the Board of Fire Commissioners that is tentatively scheduled for the 24th at 3 p.m. at the county chambers. And lastly, as you probably have heard or read, the Board of Fire Commissioners, the county commissioners voted to place a ballot question for the November election with respect to auto aid, and I believe our legal counsel may answer any questions with respect to that. So, and that's all I have.
Mr. Dortch.
Yeah, this would be probably for either, I think, legal. What's the deadline for us to put a ballot question on?
Okay. John Cadlick, Reno City Attorney. NRS 293-481 subsection 1A says, "At a general election shall provide to each county clerk within the designated territory on or before the third Monday in July preceding the election a copy of the question." So last Monday was the day. You run into a little bit of a glitch, which we will look into if it is a possible exception, and that is subsection D, which says, "At any city election in which the city clerk gives notice of the election or otherwise performs duties in connection therewith shall provide to the city clerk at least 60 days before the election." So it is possible. We will have to look into the legal implications of that. The real question is whether the city clerk does give any form of notification, since generally, once they change the election system from what was used to be odd year, mid-year to even year with everybody else, that may no longer be a valid provision in the, well, it may be valid somewhere, but it may not be valid in the city of Reno. We will look at that. We will explore that and have an answer to you by August 22nd when you come back, and that would still give you well within the 60-day time limit if it is possible. Otherwise, if you just go by the subsection A, you're out of
Yeah,
time.
because my concern is the question that the county voted to put on the ballot is, it doesn't explain what the situation is. And I mean, I truly believe we should put a question on the ballot for City of Reno taxpayers that says, should the City of Reno taxpayers subsidize Washoe County for fire services?
Well, Councilman Dorsch, if I could add something to it. You know, it's interesting because 293-481 1A1 says you have to have to the clerk a copy of the question, including an explanation of the question. I don't know. I haven't seen what they presented, so I'm not sure if their question is valid or not. I don't know if they've provided provided that, and you're also supposed to have arguments for and against the question. And if there is a financial impact, a description of the anticipated financial effect of the local government, which if the question is an advisory question, if it proposes a bond, tax, fee, or expense must be prepared in accordance with subsection 4 of NRS 293-482. So it's still open as to, and that's another thing we'll have to discern and we'll have an answer to you back by August 22nd, whether their question actually is valid because of the time constraints in which they presented it. So there may be some legal defenses to having even the question on the ballot.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously that question doesn't go into all the details about what's going on between where they can provide coverage and where they can't provide coverage, you know. And from my standpoint, if they're moving forward with that question, then we need to ask our citizens if that's the direction they want to go. Do they want the City of Reno taxpayers to subsidize that?
Right.
I mean, that's where the issue is.
Okay.
So, and then the other side of that too, Mr. Mayor, is I wonder if since they've decided to ask the public whether we should provide that service, if we should wait until November till we decide any mutual or automatic aid agreements.
Okay. Ms. Zadra and then Mr. President.
And I was advised by one of the county commissioners that they are also checking on the legality of them doing a reconsideration next week. And appears to be some question at the DA's office as to whether or not they can do that.
Okay. Mr. Fraser, and then Mr. Heshoff.
Yeah, and I agree with Councilman Dortch on this. The only thing I would say is I still think we finally got them to agree to the joint meeting on the 24th. I think we should try and move forward with that meeting and have these discussions, especially on the mutual aid part. I'm very uncomfortable with that ballot question, and I think it's hard to measure what the financial impact is going to be. And secondly, just if we do agree to mutual aid, it's different because we all know we have the SAFER grant. I think the real impacts are going to be 2 years from now is what we're able to cut. I mean, the City of Reno, we may not be able to agree to that. I mean, that's for a future council, but I think the problem lies within 2 years. How do you, if the public comes to expect something with that mutual aid agreement and we're under the SAFER now, what happens when that agreement expires? So I think that we should, I guess, be the good guys again, sit down, have the joint meeting, see if we can air out some of this stuff. But I think that ballot question is totally wrong, because you're not going to be able to measure. How do you measure the financial implications? It depends on what the calls for service are.
Well, and they haven't paid their true-ups. They've now put forensic in theirs to show that, and forensic isn't even part of it, the idea, so we have to look at it.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Mayor, we need to make sure that that item too is on the 24th. That are those true-ups, because I think we've got to make sure we come to some terms with that if we're going to move forward on the mutual aid agreement.
And I just think it was disappointing after the conversation we had here last week at our table to move forward and try and do everything we can to make sure that we're covering the areas that need to be covered, and then they go ahead and put this question on the ballot. It makes no sense to me.
And we've done some tests, and it does, as their fire chief said, it took 9 minutes to get to Hidden Valley. They can get 2 people there in that 9 minutes, but it takes 19 minutes to 20 minutes to get from the Walmart over to there. So take 3 minutes off for sirens and red lights. Mr. Ashef. Oh, okay.
I agree with Mr. Dorch.
Yeah, okay.
That's what's discouraging, Mr. Mayor. I think we had a very positive, we realized that, hey, listen, they can't cover, we were going to come to the table, and now I feel like the city of Reno, again, we've been slapped in the face, again, trying to work with the county on coming to some kind of agreement on the mutual aid provisions.
I will continue to say that I think they are short of funds, and someday they're going to find out they're moving shells from one corner to the next corner, and they're short of funds, and they're trying to cover it because they don't have to send us money and these type of things. So someday it'll come out, and I've taken over another troubled properties. Now, the people from Hot August Nights that are here for the 1 o'clock that really messed up our meeting schedule, but no, sir, you can't come up yet. It's not 1 o'clock. When it's 1 o'clock, you can sit here and listen to us jab and have a lot of fun, because we set a record getting out of here until you wanted a 1 o'clock time certain.
Really? Oh, this is my...
Oh, no, don't look at me that way. I was there when I heard the motion made. But anyway, anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that it's 1 o'clock.
You make it. Anybody second that for me?
And I'll even agree with him once.
No, you won't, because you'll give me a second on that. What time is it?
12:57. What is your time?
Oh, it's 12:57.
There's filler.
There we go.
Okay, well, we got a lady that here got overlooked on item F1 to speak. Tanya Tarp? Yeah, she just walked in a minute ago. Glad you're here. You're late. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we will have to open up public comment. We'll open up, give me a motion.
Public comment, doesn't have to be on F1.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I just had a quick comment. It's not going to be real long. It's my understanding that regarding...
Please identify yourself for the record, your name.
Oh, Tanya Tavkar.
Thank you.
Regarding item F1, it's my understanding and concern that regarding this issue, they mentioned nothing in the handbook about protection for the wild horses that have been roaming there since forever. The horses need to continue to go to water right there in the wetland area. The Department of Agriculture has criteria and NRS restrictions. It's against the law, basically, to not let the horses get to water, but yet nothing in the handbook addresses this. So that's my comment on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Does staff have a response to that?
Once again, Claudia Hansen, Plan and Engineering Manager. She's correct, wild horses are not discussed within the handbook, so we would fall back on state or federal regulations.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Let's, it's 12:59. We could have finished this. Oh, yeah, who asked you to speak?
Nobody.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, John Flansburgh, I'd like to make a correction to my answer to Councilmember Guston. There was actually one item that we did bring back last year to council, and that was an increase in the amount of crack seal material that the street department used. Because of the mild winter, we actually performed a record amount of 20 million square feet of crack sealing. We would, a normal year would be about 16 million square feet. So we did have to come back because we need more material. So
Thank
just a
you
correction.
very much for the correction. It's now 1 o'clock. We will now go to item J5. I think it is. Item J5, Hot August Nights. Is the mic on?
Now it is.
Yeah, now.
Good afternoon, Alexis Hill, Special Events Program Manager. This item before you today is a sponsorship request from Hot August Nights for sponsorship of 10% of the total cost of the city services, not to exceed $20,000. We are seeking direction from City Council on this sponsorship, and I am happy to address any questions you might have. Thank you.
Chair will entertain a motion. A motion? Second. We have a, I didn't get a public comment card, but I do have a comment that I want to make about it. Mr., is your name Marini? Mr. Marini, would you come forward, please? Now, is it guaranteed that any of this money does not go to the old geezers band?
Yankees.
Oh, yes, Yankee old geezers.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, that is correct. None of the money goes to any of the Yankees. This money is going to be used to...
No, it's old geezers.
Old geezers?
Yes, yes.
Well, some of this money is going to be used to continue the efforts to court some of the companies that have agreed to come back to Hot August Nights this year, like General Motors, like Ford Motor Company.
Okay.
That's
enough.
Thank you.
Don't oversell. Mr. Dene, you had a comment.
Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government, and now that you've taken it in that direction, it's the Two Wild Yankees band. It started out as the Two Wild Geezers band.
No, Geezers isn't in there anymore.
That was the old one. We changed the name. We changed the name.
They're just not in the name.
Okay.
You got to come and see us, and you'll find out it's not the Two Wild Geezers. People thought we were disparaging ourselves with our great talents and saying, you are not geezers. I did not come up here to say that. I mainly came up here to definitely point out that the Two Wild Yankees Geezers band is doing their performance philanthropically. You know what that means, right? Philanthropically. Means for free, for charity, for nothing. On top of that, the problem really exists that most places couldn't afford to pay us what we're worth anyway. That being said, I want to talk about the agenda item in case it got lost at my public comments. I support Hot August Nights. I think Hot August Nights is probably the best bang for the buck that Reno gets for any of its events, maybe for anything for that matter. Here they're asking for just a pittance of support, and it isn't even money. It's sort of like you give them some services at a lesser amount, up to a total of $20,000. And I could go through the list of organizations that call themselves free that you give massive amounts of money to, but I won't do that because I don't want to be a curmudgeon. I just want to come up here and support. Is it too late for that? Anyway, I just wanted to come up here and tell you that I support this agenda item and would like for you to support them. And none of the money is going to the Two Wild Yankees band.
Yes, sir. I'll try to get that right, Geezer. All right. Any other close off public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to say thank you to Hot August Nights and the board. I know that it was a rough road for a while, and I'm certainly glad that both mayors are on it, and just want to compliment the board. I mean, things have really turned around over there, and Mr. Marini and everybody. So it's nice to see.
Legal counsel, do I have to recuse myself from this vote? Because I sit on that board now.
If you're sitting on that board, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest you recuse yourself.
Okay, I'm going to recuse myself because I sit on the board.
Too late.
Yeah, it's too late anyway. So if I'm in violation...
Just disclose that you're on the board.
I'm on the board. Okay, I have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Yes, ma'am.
Marilyn Craig, Deputy City Attorney. Could you clarify for the record what action or inaction you took with respect to F1, the lady who spoke about the wild horses? Did you reopen that agenda item? You
Just open public comment.
You just took more public comment
That's all.
from the first.
Just
That's
That's all we did.
general public comment.
General public comment.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
very much. I just wanted to make sure that the record was clear.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. We're in recess until the hour of 2 o'clock.
You were actually efficient today, Mr. Mayor. That might be a record.
I'm having you out of order.
J2, Mr. Mayor.
Item J2. Y'all want to take some action before we let them speak? Mr. J. Don't oversell, Mr. J.
Me?
If you're ahead of the clubhouse, I wouldn't speak too long.
On your mark, get set, go. Richard. Richard J., Great Basin Youth Soccer. Just wanted to bring you up to date on some of the developments over the last couple of weeks. We've been in contact with the U.S. Youth Soccer Olympic Development Program. Olympic Development Program is as it stands, Olympic development for the program. It's set at regional, national, and state levels, and they've expressed interest in using Moana Stadium as their training facility. Currently, we're out at Golden Eagle, way out in Sparks. It makes it difficult for Carson people. Nevada Youth Soccer Association is interested in hosting their licensing courses out there. We've been in contact with the NSCAA Goalkeeper 3 program. They're interested in hosting their Goalkeeper 3 program out there, and that's a national program, only 3 on the West Coast. And they want to host it here because of the accessibility, and we expect about 50 coaches coming in from out of the area. A couple tournaments have approached us. The Sagebrush Fall Startup, about 100 plus teams, about 35% of them come from out of state. It'd be ideal for them to stay at Peppermill or Atlanta. International 3v3 tournament, also in March, about 20% of their teams from out of state. Men's League is interested in out there. They're currently playing at Washoe out at South Valleys. They feel that Moana Stadium would be more conducive for them. Summer camps, we run 3 camps right now, and it'd be really nice to have them at Moana simply because of the proximity to everybody. We make about $5 a player off that. That goes into our scholarship fund. So I'm going to just wrap it up with, guys, bottom of the 9th, full count, bases loaded, 3-2. Let's bring it home with Grand Slam. Thank you.
Anything new to say, sir?
Excuse me?
Anything new?
Well, I'm going to go over some of the things that Richard did. I'm the president of Great Basin Youth Soccer League, and we've been working pretty close with the city with this program, and we've been monitoring the progress. More recently, some delays in the program, and I want to state that we can't have any more delays in this project. We need to act now, get this contract signed, and let's move with these fields because we have, we're going to run out of,
today.
Correct, we're going to run out of summertime to get this sod laid and everything else. So, and
That's
we
good.
have projects that we would like to start in the spring.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much. No other, close the public comment section, bring it back to the table. Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor, I think I'm comfortable with Councilwoman Zadra to move forward with both of these agreements. This is a tremendous first step, and I want to take a moment to thank the mayor and all the council members. We had such a great demolition event out there, and all those kids, we still owe them a steak dinner. I think you owe them a steak dinner, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move forward with both of these today. I think Councilman Ayazi has a map, J2, because for the aquatics folks to secure the site, I just want to make sure that we have the boundaries of what we're approving today in J2. I'd like to move forward with both of these, J2 and J3, and I don't know if Councilwoman Zadra has
That's a motion,
anything to say.
Ms. Zadra?
Second.
All right.
It's time.
Okay. Mr. Azar, you had something?
I just want to clarify on Exhibit A on the map that in J2, that the map is where the lease agreement goes. It's for the northeast corner of Moana Lane and Baker Lane. That's shown on here as the proposed future aquatic center and the parking lot around that.
How much acreage is that?
The entire acreage of the site, not including the fire station, is 18. Just guessing that area of the pool and the parking lot is about 4.
About 4 or 5?
Yes, that's just my estimate based on the map.
Okay. All right.
So just with that clarification of the agreement, that was it?
Okay.
Was this motion for both of these, or just?
Yeah,
Yes.
I make a motion for both item J2 and J3.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. That's why I said don't oversell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
We come back at 6 now.
We will be adjourned until the hour of 6 o'clock.
Recessed.
We'll be in recess till the hour of 6. We do before I go into, well, can you come back this evening because we don't have public comment right now? We'll take it. Come on up, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, whatever.
I hope that you each got one of these, and I've supplied them to your clerk, and some are stapled left-handed, right-handed. Okay, my name is Clem Theodore Joseph Sienkiewicz Jr., and I was here last on the second Wednesday in February. All of you were present except Dave, and he was in Egypt, not on a fact-finding trip, but he learned things he didn't know, so it was fact-finding. The rest of you were here. Every one of you. I remember Sharon. Andrew Klinger wasn't our city manager, and you're his rep, obviously. Pierre, you were here, and Jessica, you were. And I told you about a police officer and a problem I had with an order of protection. Do you remember me? I was very sick. I was out of the hospital 7 days when I was here. I've since lost the sight in this eye. It is supposed to come back because I had an ocular lens transplant, and they're going to puff some air up and see if they can. It was a human donor transplant deal, and Dr. Shaffin's going to get the vision back, hopefully. In the meantime, today is my birthday. Mayor, you already wished me happy birthday, and I notice you've lost weight, and I hope it's because you want to. I've lost 60 pounds. I didn't want to lose that much. I didn't have any choice. It's adrenal deficit, hypogenetic, something that interfered with the sodium chloride solution in my left eye that was transplanted, and I drop, and I don't know when I'm going to drop, but Remsa has saved my life 7 times in May alone. I've spent 127 days in intensive care since January. My hospital bill is approaching $500,000. That's got nothing to do with it. The Reno police officer that needed to be fired, when I talked to you in February, his last name's McCauley, M-A-C-C-A-U-L-E-Y. That's one police officer out of 250. That stinks to high heaven, and that's because he's returning a favor for a high school bro, Andy Karen. I sued Mr. Karen because when I was in the hospital, he took everything I owned to the city dump. He heard I died. Unless you're talking to a ghost, I'm not dead. Officer Nevins, who drives Avalanche, and I only see 046, the year I was born, he needs to be scolded because he said, "You're a registered sex offender." Never have been, never was. Got all the proof in the world, including things from the district attorney including things from the assistant district attorney, including things from the assistant public defender, no, the alternate public defender. She had to defend me because the accuser is already using the services of the public defender. My time's up. Everything's on here. You need to look at the long-term goals if you want to sell Reno. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll be in recess till the hour of 6 o'clock this evening, where we have 2 public hearings.
And thank all of you.
Thank you. This is our 6 o'clock hearing on a special assessment district and on the digital off-premise advertising display, including live emitting. Madam Secretary, have all the notices been sent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Are you on item N1 or N2?
I'm going to start with N1.
Okay. Proper notice was given, and 3 letters were received 3 letters of protest were received.
Okay. All right. Staff?
That helps. Yeah.
Identify yourself for the record.
Steve Hardesty, City of Reno Public Works. I'm the Assessment District Coordinator for the city. Before you today is the first reading of the ordinance, as well as a couple of other resolutions. For the 2011 Special Assessment District Number 1, the first thing we wanted to do is do the determination of hardship. I've got 6 applications that meet all the criteria for the hardship determination, and we've had one that was living outside the city that didn't count, one that I didn't get the proper documentation from, and another one, it was the wrong kind of property. It was a commercial property versus a residential property. So if we could get the council to accept the determination of hardship on those 7 properties, that would be the first step, and then we can go through the rest of the hearing.
Can I ask one quick question,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor? Because in the
Mr.
staff
Ashcraft.
report, it looked, so there were 5 that met it, and then 2 that you were waiting for
And
verification.
I've got verification on those other 2,
Okay, so those are the 7.
so there are 7 of them, I believe, altogether. Yes, sir.
And you've met with every one of them or talked to them or something?
Excuse me?
You've met with every one of them and talked to them?
I've got all the documentation, yes,
Okay,
sir.
all right.
So you need a motion
To
To approve the
Just the
hardship
hardship.
determinations.
hardship
Okay.
determination.
I'll make the motion, since they've provided verification to staff, to make that finding that they meet the requirements and they qualify for a hardship. And those are the 7 parcels that are listed in the staff report.
Okay. Have a second? Have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. N11, resolution.
Well,
Can I ask?
Excuse me, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Steve, one of the letters that was attached to our
Excuse me, Susan Bellroth, Deputy City Attorney. That would be the next step. Now we need to have the public hearing on the
Right.
objections, and then Steve can go through them, and then you can have the resolution to dispense.
Okay.
Okay, do you want the other, before I ask my question? It's an objection. The gentleman from, on O'Farrell Street said that his assessment, the title company didn't show the assessment. Have you spoken with him, or what's the status of that?
Yes, sir, I've talked to him. In the case of the way that's set up, the assessment is assigned to the property itself, so it's not assigned to an individual. So if in fact somebody buys the property in the process of the assessment district, from the day it's created until it's actually, the assessments are actually levied, it goes to the property. So whoever's owning the property at the end gets the levy. Now, in the case of Mr. Stack, we did, I did follow through with, I think it was American Title, and talked to Kelly at American Title, and they're going to try to work with Mr. Stack to get that figured out. But I did talk to Mr. Stack over the phone, and also sent him a letter and explained to him that it goes to the property, and whoever's lucky enough to have the property is lucky enough to get the assessment.
It looks like the timing from date on his note and the assessment, there was maybe some overlapping or very
Well,
short.
property owners, the seller is responsible for letting the property owner and the title company know at this stage, because there really isn't anything except for what we've got on file here at City Hall. Once we've got the assessments levied and we have the second reading and everything's effective, after the effective date, then we'll have everything recorded at the county offices, and then title companies won't have any trouble finding it. But in this interim thing, it's a little rough, and in the case of this one, I understand it was a foreclosure, which meant there wasn't a real owner that was accepting things and really knew anything, so
Okay.
it's one
The
of
note-
those.
The note doesn't say foreclosure, but, okay, because his argument was with the previous owner and the title company.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Madam Secretary, you will enter any protest letters you've gotten into the record, please?
Yes, I will, sir.
Do you have any speaking on this? Any
I do
items
not.
wish to speak? Public comment?
Did you open the public hearing?
Yes. I did open public comment. Just started.
Did you open the public hearing, sir?
Well, okay, maybe I didn't. All right.
Yes, you did, sir.
That's what I thought.
For the record, Susan Ballroth, Deputy City Attorney. There was one written protest received that is entitled to be dispensed with, and Steve Hardesty will bring that forward.
There was actually three protests that were provided. One was Mr. Stack, who purchased in between the creating and the levying part. Another one was from Mr. Rakovitz, who didn't quite understand the 50% corner credit and the way that the policy was established back in 1996. He was thinking that his commercial property on Washington, 111 Washington Street, should have gotten the credit for the work that was done on First Street. So that wasn't really an objection that we could actually say that had any merits. The other one was the Nashes over on Regent Street. They're being assessed for a commercial driveway coming off of Mayberry onto Vernon Drive. And his fence basically is there. He isn't even aware of there being an easement for Vernon Drive to go through the back section of his property. So as far as the special benefit goes, he really doesn't meet the criteria of a special benefit, and we're requesting council to just abate that assessment.
And if I may ask, Mr. Rakovitz, is that, I got a call from a Mr. Brockovich to talk to, and I think that was that the same number, the same parcel? Because it was on First Street in Washington, right? Where, it used to be a gas station many years ago?
Right. And what that was, sir, is he's got a commercial property at 111 Washington, and he's got a residential property on the backside of that block at Winter and First Street. That one's got a land use code of 20, which is a single-family residential, and the other one's got a land use code of 41, I believe it is, which is general commercial.
So that was the gentleman that you explained earlier, the second? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And the Secretary holds all copies of all of this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and she'll enter them all into the record.
Yes, sir, and if the council is agreeable, then we can go ahead and strike the Nashes for that Vernon Drive thing, if the council is agreeable with that.
How much are we talking about?
$661.37.
That's for the Nashes, right?
Yes, sir.
What about for Rakovich? Or Rakovich?
I believe, I could look that up real quick, but it's about, in fact, I could probably look it up real quick. I believe the Rakovitz was about $2,200, I believe.
And for the record, Susan Ballroth, Deputy City Attorney, they were properly assessed. And it was explained to him that his assessment was calculated correctly.
Understood. I'm just trying to get a sense of what we're talking about here. And then what about for Mr. Stack?
Mr. Stack was $553.32.
And then quickly, the option they have is that they can spread the amount over time, correct? Up to 10 years?
In the case of this district, it's 20 years.
20 years?
And the Rakovitz, their assessment was $1,341.52.
Okay. And do we know what the interest rate is?
Not until the bonds are sold.
Right. And when do we plan to do that?
council proceeds with this as scheduled, we'll do the second reading on the 22nd. The effective date will be the 26th. They should get the mail, 24th. They should get their bills in the mail on the 27th or 28th. So the 24th of September will be the end of the 30-day cash payment period, and it'll be soon right after that they'll go out and sell the bonds.
Do you have a sense of what, the interest rate is going to be pretty low?
Hopefully, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Steve, if I can ask you one more question. The assessment and the estimate, how much different were they? We have found over the period of time that we've done these special assessment districts that the estimate is quite a bit higher than the actual bill that you're going to send out. Did you notice a great deal of difference here, or was it close? Was the estimate and the actual bill close?
The estimate itself, sir, was $1,820,988.76. The actual assessment, as we've got it right now, is $678,352.93. Of that, $13,396 we have government deductions for the county, veterans, for the federal government, and city properties, and then the Nash deduction. So the bottom line will be $664,295.55.
So
it ended up being 37.2519% of the estimate.
Yeah, that's the thing gets lost so often, is the original estimate and the actual bill. 37% of the estimate. And okay, I mean, I know some people think we just estimate high to come back and make everybody happy, but we've seen that happen, Westfield Village, other places where we just got better deals and it was the right time to do it.
Right, sir, and that's spread out over 10 units too. So some of those estimates, some of the actual bid costs are pretty close to the estimate. The other ones are lower, and so that helps to bring it down. So.
Okay.
And it would have been even lower, but we had that sewer lateral project addition on Westfield. So that was an extra 110 grand. So
yeah, and the great thing about it is people talking about Westfield, they took advantage of that by
44. We have 44 properties do that. Yes, sir.
And we anticipated originally maybe 8 to 10 would do it, but yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Where would you like to go now? You want me to do my real quick narrative, or do you just want to proceed, Mr. Mayor?
Well, we're going to proceed.
Do we have to approve those three?
It's just the one, excuse me.
We've got two resolutions.
Yeah.
Or
And
one-
Susan
yeah.
Ballroth, Deputy City Attorney. The Nash is the one that's entitled to be revised because he falls within the strict requirements of the obligations, and his property was incorrectly included. That part of the property was incorrectly included. So with
We
regard to
didn't take care of that just
Mr.
a minute
Nash,
ago?
the adjustment can be made.
We just took care of that a minute ago, didn't we?
That was 7 other ones.
Okay.
That was the hardships.
All
This
right.
is the, just
Okay.
take it off the rolls.
So I'll move to approve the staff recommendation about Mr. Nash and the adjustment that needs to be made on that property.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Now we will go to item N11, resolution.
Resolution number 7749. A resolution dispensing with certain protests and objections to the assessment roll for the City of Reno, Nevada, 2009 Special Assessment District Number 1, and confirming said assessment roll and the assessments therein, ratifying action previously taken in connection with said district, and providing for related matters thereto.
Mr. Hart, did you want to say something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I believe that it's time to close the public hearing. Do we close the public hearing before we vote on the resolutions?
Okay. Close the public hearing.
All right, so I'll make that motion.
Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. All right, now the resolution. Excuse me, the ordinance.
Bill number 6808. An ordinance confirming the proceedings taken in providing for certain sidewalk, driveway approach, and street improvements in the City of Reno, Nevada, 2011 Special Assessment District Number 1, providing for the payment of the cost and expenses of said improvements, providing for assessing the cost of said improvements against the parcels of land benefited by said improvements, describing the manner for the collection and payment of said assessments, and providing penalties for delinquent payments together with other matters properly relating thereto.
Move to adopt?
Refer.
Refer.
Second.
Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Now, N13, resolution.
Resolution number 7750. Resolution to authorize the recordation of ordinance number 6174 and a schedule of estimated maximum special benefits to the tracts and parcels in the city of Reno, Nevada, 2011 Special Assessment District Number 1.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Thank you very much. All right, this time we'll go to the item N2, digital off-premise advertising display, including light emitting oops. Madam Secretary, have all the notices been sent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, proper notice was given. We received 19 emails or letters of concern or in opposition.
Okay, and you will record all of those in the record, please?
Yes.
All right. We have people that wish to speak. John Hara.
Would you open the public hearing, please?
Ma'am?
Open the public hearing, please?
Didn't I just open it?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you say that.
I did. I just asked her if all the notices had been sent. Huh? Okay, public hearing's open. Madam Secretary, never had so many people run a meeting on one night. Madam Secretary, have all the notices been sent?
Yes, still.
We're opening the public hearing. All right. All right. John Hara, H-A-R-A.
How do I turn this on?
The mic's on, and
There we
she'll, all you have to do is move it up.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm actually here as an alternate on behalf of Scenic Nevada, representing the appeal for Scenic Nevada. Mark Ray and Lori Ray were going to be here. So,
identify yourself for the record.
John Hara,
All
65
right.
Woodchuck Court, Reno, Nevada.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure, are we in the appeal right now?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that what's going on?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Anyway, thank you for hearing Scenic Nevada's appeal to the Planning Commission's decision to allow digital billboards. As I said before, I'm speaking on behalf of Scenic Nevada, but as an alternate, which means that I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. But having been familiar with this subject for quite a while, something that's near and dear to my heart, I think I can speak to this. As you well know, Lori Ray has been one of the primary proponents of preserving our scenic heritage, and over time she's become a well-versed in the issues and consequences of allowing digital billboards in our community. And one of the things that I would like to do is point you to the letter that was sent. It's a 7-page letter. I know it's a long letter, but the reason it's so long, I'm hoping that each of you read that and took the time to take a look at that, because what we have seen here is that there are some serious flaws with the existing ordinance as it's proposed, some things that may have consequences for us further down the road. Anyway, Lori can't be here tonight to represent our appeal because the process by which we got here hasn't been very predictable nor consistent, and due to rescheduling, she's out of town. Despite all of her preparation, she's unable to attend. Mark Ray, who was going to represent us tonight, actually was walking on his way here when he got word that the trial that he's working on, the verdict just came in just now, so I'm up. Anyway, I just wanted to remind the council that our appeal's been moved around at great inconvenience to the people who've taken time from their lives to speak out largely against digital billboards, at least on our side. And we were scheduled in March, postponed till late June, didn't make it onto the agenda until July 11th, and now here we are again before you on the 18th. So it's kind of hard to rally people here for support and things like that. I just wanted to bring that up because in all of this time, what had happened was we had originally been considering a proposed ordinance that had been sort of the result of some earlier workshops. And in that time, the outdoor advertising industry has had numerous inputs into the earlier workshop and produced iterations of the proposed ordinance to the point where you are now about to consider a seriously flawed and problematic ordinance. And that has, through the creative use of exceptions, essentially removed most of the restrictions from the billboard industry in our community through this use of exceptions. This is really not an exaggeration.
She's going to give you 10 more minutes.
All right, thanks. Okay, this is not, this is simply a fact. And what I'm trying to point out here is that what you're looking at tonight requires more due diligence on the part of experts and representatives of the community to find any possible points of balance that will protect the community from increasing, not reducing, billboard blight and clutter. In other words, I've stood up here for several times, and as other members of the community have, and the City Council has made it pretty clear that one of the things that their interpretation, your interpretation of the existing billboard law is that it is to reduce clutter. It is to reduce the total number of billboards. But what you're looking at tonight actually will not do that. So simply put, Scenic Nevada is and always has been opposed to this ordinance. We believe it violates the intent and letter of the law that was passed by voters in 2000, and that simply affirms the public's desire that our community not have any new billboards erected. The law says no new billboards, and we believe that the interpretations promoted by the outdoor advertising industry in agreement with staff and City Council that are now considering allowing digital billboards are intentionally stretched and actually incorrect. One of the things I wanted to point out here is this is what you're really looking at right now, just as an example of something that may or may not work. Take a look at this. This is a billboard, a skeleton billboard off of I-80. And it has been taken down. And this is what it looks like now without that billboard. Compare the two. That to that. So this is what Scenic Nevada, this is what a lot of people from the community have been up here talking about. But just based on what we've been able to observe, or not observe, just taking a look at the ordinance as it's proposed, there's every chance that, and we're not experts, we're just people looking at this, there's every chance that that space where that billboard has been removed from can be repopulated with another billboard. So, digital possibly. And in fact, would the company that takes that billboard down have to use the exchange ratio to do it? Would they even have to? So the exchange ratio is now at 1-to-1 outside of the clutter areas. And I just want to point out that the clutter areas are, I'm not sure if you all know, but from the materials that we've been able to see that are publicly available, those clutter areas are defined just simply as small red markers on a map of Reno. There's no definition there in terms of who owns them or where they sit inside of what is a clutter zone. So for us, it's kind of hard to tell what the consequences might be. I'm not sure what insight you guys have on that, but it seems to be that there's the potential for consequences that are unintended if this law gets passed or this ordinance gets approved. Like I said, since I'm an alternate, I don't have 15 minutes of material, but I just wanted to stand up here and point out a couple of things that I think...
Mr. Mayor, just so you know, you can save your time for rebuttal later. You don't have to use up all 15.
Okay.
So you can save it so you can come back and talk later, if that's what you'd rather do.
All right. I will do that then. And the only point I would like to reiterate is that Scenic Nevada, on this particular appeal, has been consistent in our belief that the law passed in 2000 is the intent and the letter of the law that we should be following, which does not allow digital billboards. Thank you.
Okay, we'll book you 6 minutes. Book him 6 minutes. Chris Wicker, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Good evening, council members, and I want to always like to thank elected officials for your service, because I know it's pretty thankless at times. I have a couple general observations. First, you should know by now who you're dealing with regard to the billboard industry. The billboard industry is notorious across the country for suing cities and counties for millions of dollars if they think that you have crossed any of their what they call vested rights. So just like the proverbial nose under the camel's tent, whatever you grant to the billboard companies through this ordinance, you will never take it away without the payment of millions of dollars. In 2000, the citizens of the city of Reno spoke, and they passed by ballot initiative a new ordinance that remains on the books. And just as a reminder to the council members, I'll read that language. The construction of new off-premises advertising displays, billboards, is prohibited, and the city of Reno may not issue permits for their construction. Now, if you pass this digital billboard, you're surely going to be granting construction permits for these new billboards. Therefore, it is against the ordinance that the citizens of the city of Reno passed. Now, the city council has already, in past councils, violated the public trust by having your banking and relocation policy. When a billboard is relocated and moved to some place that didn't have a billboard before, try to tell the people that live in that area that that's not a new billboard. It is a new billboard, and I will bet you that you had to issue a permit for its construction. So if you're going to ignore the statute or the ordinance that was passed by the citizens of Reno in 2000, you should just say that's what you're doing. Because if you pass this ordinance for digital billboards, that's exactly what you're doing. A digital billboard, you're going to have to take down what's there and build a brand new billboard, and it's going to be new. It's going to be 8 screens instead of 1 screen that they have now. And I think that if you give good faith to the ordinance passed by the citizens of the city of Reno, you need to deny this billboard ordinance. If you choose to go forward with this billboard ordinance, I want to point out just a couple of things about it. When we started out talking about this billboard ordinance, we were talking about something like a 8-to-1 exchange ratio, because the new billboard is going to have, as I understand it, 8 screens, and to reduce clutter in the city, we were going to look at some kind of exchange rate. Since those workshops where the input from the citizens of Reno were taken, this billboard ordinance that we have now is basically a 1-to-1 ratio. So the billboard industry gets its 8 new screens for 1 billboard. Secondly, there are special exceptions built into this ordinance to violate the protections that are built into it. There's no reason for them without the fact that they're going to be breached.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sue Smith.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I'm here today to represent myself and the other residents of Reno who love our landscapes and views. This is an important decision that you're making because there's a lot at stake. So a lot of advertising dollars to be made on these billboards versus a loss of our beautiful views replaced by essentially a TV set with lighting to catch our attention and take away from the beautiful night sky. I wanted to bring up that we are not alone. There are a lot of cities throughout the United States that are being requested to allow digital ordinances to be written, and a lot of communities are struggling with this. And I guess I had a suggestion, maybe there's a best practices ordinance through the League of Cities. Maybe there's some places that you can go for some direction. To staff's credit, we were invited to come to meetings that the billboard industry was at. This ordinance was written through those meetings. We were unable to kind of keep track of when they were going, when they were canceled. They're in the middle of the day. A lot of us work. This isn't our business. And plus, we really don't want to be in the business of writing an ordinance because we just want it to not happen. So that's how we ended up with an ordinance that basically was written by the billboard industry. And I would contend, I have a picture I'd like to show you. Open that. This is a picture that I pass a couple times a week on West 4th Street. It's been blank for 6 months. I don't know, I guess a couple of things that I'd like to say is one of the things in this ordinance says that they can't deny the 1,000-foot distance doesn't equate on the other side of the street. Well, just on the other side of the street are mobile homes. There's homes up on the ridge. There's homes down below. It's kind of the Truckee River corridor right there, and you can see there's a beautiful mountain behind it. And this ordinance, first of all, they can put a digital billboard there. And they may be intending to. I don't know why, because they don't have anything there. And I guess one of the things I'd like you to consider that maybe the billboard industry needs to consider is maybe less is more. Maybe there's more value when there's fewer billboards, and they can make as much money charging more money for these. Take some of these down. If they're going to put their digital billboards up, at least give us some relief. Another one that I wanted to bring to your attention is section 905, number 9. It says, no display shall cause a glare or other condition that impairs the vision of the driver or any motor vehicle or obstructs or interferes with a driver's view of surrounding traffic situations. How's that going to be administered? Who's going to administer that?
Thank you. Marilyn Melton.
I'm Marilyn Melton, and you know I've been here before, and you know how I feel. So you wonder why I'm here again, because these other people are much more articulate than I am. But I just have one comment. I am just always totally amazed how you people are trying to bring in Silicon Valley. Have you been down to where Silicon Valley is? You know the sign ordinances there? You can walk down the street of Palo Alto and never see a sign that's bigger than 2 by 3. Those people would just love to come to Reno, the sign capital of the world. That seems to be able to get more trash in this town all the time. And you also want to bring the Olympics. You want a classy place with a lot of sex shops down Virginia Street, a lot of signs, and a lot of people downtown that are doing drunk walks. I'm just totally amazed about what you want and how you appease the sign companies.
Thank you very much. Ryan Saunders.
Mayor, City Council, I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I'm just going to keep my comments brief. We've looked at the ordinance, and we feel like the industry's made some good concessions, and we feel pretty confident with what staff has recommended after going through the workshops, and we just want to basically voice our support of it. We have a few recommendations which I'll let our attorney speak to, but we do feel like it does reduce clutter in some of the target areas and accomplishes all the goals without hurting the smaller companies who don't have the same inventory as other companies, and so we feel like it's a good compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Gilmore?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm Frank Gilmore and I represent Saunders Outdoor. As Ryan just mentioned, Saunders is obviously an interested stakeholder and is in favor of a provision that gives concessions to those seeking to reduce the clutter, but while also providing opportunities for business people to display their speech and to advertise. That being said, Saunders is in favor of this amendment only to the extent that it is fair to all the interested stakeholders, not only those with a lot to gain, but potentially those with a little to gain. And one of the examples of how this ordinance does not do that, and I'll be very brief, but I'll be very specific, has to do with the way the various signs are defined. And I would direct the council's attention to 1816-905 that deals with the spacing. Essentially, the way that this draft is written favors those people with more signs over those people or companies with fewer signs. The way this is defined essentially says that for static signs or for any regular sign, 750 feet between any non-animated sign. But then the new provision says any animated off-premises sign shall be located no closer than 1,000 feet to the next animated sign. The problem with that, council members, is if you look at the definitions of this draft, an animated sign is a changeable sign. A changeable sign includes those that are manually activated, meaning someone can go out, pull down the vinyl, put up a new vinyl. It also includes what they're calling the new LED digital signs. It also includes what they call the tri-vision sign. So the way that this is drafted essentially lumps static signs, digital signs, and tri-vision signs all into the same definition of a changeable sign, or changeable sign also means animated sign under this draft. But now we have animated signs have to be 1,000 feet from each other, and other signs are 750. The way that's defined is not only unworkable and confusing, but it gives the advantage to those stakeholders who have more inventory than less. The proposal that Saunders has made and has urged the City Council to implement is that 1,000 feet be spaced between computer-controlled, as defined in this new draft, which we got 30 minutes ago, 1,000 feet between computer-controlled signs. That is what the new digital LED sign amendment is about. We're adding the digital signs, make the spacing 1,000 feet between those digital signs, leave the old static signs and the old tri-vision signs, let them be at 750. That's the provision that Saunders has urged the staff to make. There is some comment in here about how Saunders has urged the staff to make that, and I would suggest to the council that the way this is drafted, the way that it's defined, does not adequately explain the distinction between a static sign, a new digital sign, and a tri-vision sign, and it improperly lumps digital signs with tri-vision signs with static signs.
Okay, thank you very much. Aaron West?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just wanted to touch on a couple things since we're kind of going back a few steps. You know, I want to thank the Planning Commission. I want to thank all of you and of course staff for really the diligent process that we've been through, and it's been quite a journey. A little bit about the industry. You know, we are in the industry of promoting local business. In fact, Clear Channel alone, 90% of our business is actually local companies. So we're out there promoting the local scene. We've had conversations on items such as safety. The Federal Highway Administration even undertook a study to try and prove that digitals were unsafe. They could not come to that conclusion, so they actually abandoned the study. Lighting standards. We've spent a lot of time on the lighting standards. These are not any lighter. Based on the fact that they adjust with ambient light, they are not any brighter than the current signs that are out there. And in terms of, there's been some comments about the recommendations the standards that you see in this proposed ordinance don't really have any basis. Actually, most of the standards come from the Federal Highway Administration recommendations themselves in terms of flip times and so forth. I thought it was interesting, this slide that Mr. Harris showed us. That actually is an example of the ordinance in working. A sign could not go back on that site at the bowling alley there because of spacing limitations. So those are the types of things that we allow the ordinance to work, and we can clean up a lot of these areas. Also, in terms of Mrs. Smith and the image that she had, that's a perfect example where this ordinance and the changes proposed would provide an incentive for us to remove a sign of that nature, with the idea that we could gain benefit in another more high traffic, more suitable area for that. As I mentioned, this has been an exhaustive process, and in fact, to contradict what was said earlier by Scenic Nevada, they have been present at all the meetings that we've discussed this ordinance. Lori Ray was a very active participant in the last stakeholders meeting, and in fact, there were several items that were updated in here as a function of her participation. As proposed, we are very supportive of the ordinance. There are a couple things that I would just like to bring to your attention. There appears to be a slight conflict on pages 3 and 4. In section 5, it talks about the restricted areas. And 395, it references 395 from Panther Drive to the northern city limits. And then on page 4, section 10, number D, talks about areas where digital billboards are not allowed at all. And this is actually redundant and duplicative because it then takes that corridor from North McCarran all the way up. So I think it makes sense that we do one or the other. And then the only other concern we have, we appreciate staff's consideration for the special exception and how that might work in certain circumstances. The challenge we have is that on page 10, number 4, the conditions associated with that, we feel that these conditions have been debated thoroughly, and so there's no need to...
You can have a little more time.
Okay. If I can just finish my thought.
Yes.
We don't really feel it because all of the operating parameters have been debated so extensively, we don't really feel the need to condition those operating parameters.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. We have any other public speakers wish to speak? Anybody in the audience that hadn't spoken wish to speak? What? Yes, you have 6 minutes, Mr. Har. Is Mr. Har still here? No, I really don't. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to close the public comment section, bring it back to the table for discussion. Ms. Frazen.
Mr. Mayor, Claudia, a few questions for you on this. What is the point of the special exceptions? And Lori Ray's letter, that was one of her big concerns over and over again in the document, was if you're going to prohibit them, but why have the special exceptions provision?
Claudia Hansen, Planning and Engineering Manager. The special exceptions was brought up in, I think, the previous council meeting to come up with some options for sign companies that can't meet the spacing requirements. So if they only have a few signs in the market and they can't meet those specific requirements, whatever they might be, spacing or whatever it is, that would give them an option to come forward to a public hearing and potentially say they don't meet the spacing, but they'd be able to take down a sign somewhere else or turn it off at 11 o'clock or limit the height or bring up some other option to show how it benefits the city to bring in a digital sign into the market. And there might be one standard or two standards that they can't meet, but they might be able to offer something else that would overall meet the intent of the code.
But getting back to Mr. Wicker's testimony, wouldn't that open the door for lawsuits then? Because even on special use permits, it's really discretionary by the board. So I guess that would be concerning to me based on the number of suits we've had over the years with the industry.
any ordinance brings forward the opportunity for a lawsuit, I would say.
And then on those special areas, with the exceptions, are we making sure that, that there are no exceptions? For example, in the Mount Rose corridor, there wouldn't be that opportunity for applying for the special use permit, correct?
There's special exceptions is how we've listed it, and the limited areas that don't allow it is, I believe it is available, 410, it is available for special exceptions.
So if council wanted to tonight, we could restrict those areas completely?
Sure, you could take off on page 8.
I'm sorry, our pages are different.
Yeah, let me, if I could back up a little bit, actually. I put before you another copy of the ordinance. I've changed very little of it, and I'll go through it.
Okay, here we go.
It's on your desk, on your,
Page.
on front of you there.
Yeah, 'cause those
And there's
pages-
some notes in there that were discussed tonight, and I can go through those if you'd like.
Why don't, Mr. President, why don't we have staff make a report right now, and then we'll get into questions with them?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't you go ahead with staff report?
Thank you very much. So in the version that I left on your desks there, I've gone through and I've met with, I received Lori Ray's letter. I've met with Saunders representative and Clear Channel representatives, and they gave me some comments that I've gone in. There's some wording, technical wording, as well as just clarification that they've requested. On just going through it from the beginning, Mr. West brought up the difference between, starting on page 3, section 5, and page 4, section 10. The difference between those on number 5, that's a cap in the area, so you can't increase the number of signs in that area. Number 10 limits that there's no digital boards in that area. So they're two specific areas for two different purposes. One's a cap, and one restricts it for digital.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question about that real quick? Why are we restricting those areas? I mean, I thought the discussion here was to take care of the areas where there was clutter and maybe even open up the freeways a little more. Why would we restrict, why would we restrict digitals in that area along the freeway?
Those were areas that were, and the industry can correct me if I'm wrong, it was agreed upon at the stakeholders meeting that there's certain areas that should be protected. Scenic Nevada brought those areas forward, that those are areas, the specific areas that they would like to see protected from digital.
What are you protecting?
The view corridors.
But if they take a board down and put a digital up, what are you protecting? If they take a board down and put a digital board up, what are you protecting?
It would just be the difference of the types of boards. So it would be the changeable message coming in there. And Scenic Nevada felt that those were areas that they specifically did not want to see the digital boards allowed.
But they don't want digital boards anywhere.
That's true, but they said those areas in particular, in her letter, she stated that those were areas specifically.
I understand that, but I mean, again, it comes back to what I've said all along. I mean, from a land use standpoint, I don't distinguish between a digital board and a static board. I mean, I actually think the digital boards look better, and they put out less light. So as far as the dark, as a matter of fact, I think they meet all the dark skies requirements. So I just don't understand why would we restrict them. I mean, as we stated up here, I mean, we really wanted to tackle these corridors, but we wanted to open it up in other areas.
And that's
Okay.
a policy decision, so.
Okay.
Okay. So moving on, on page 5, Mr. Gilmore's comments, he did raise the issue between non-animated or no animated and animated signs. And in the definitions section, and sorry to flip around to different sections here, but on page 18, there was some confusion, and I think existing wording, I think, was unclear in the ordinance. We've got electrically activated signs, which are fixed message, such as time and temperature, computer controlled, which are the digital signs, and mechanically changeable signs is a new definition that I added in, and that would be the Tri-Vision. The Tri-Vision originally was, Tri-Vision actually wasn't identified specifically, so we brought that in, and I believe I had it in the wrong section. So it really should be an electrically activated and not up under manually. So where I have it on the version you got tonight would be where staff would recommend that that goes. And then back on page 5, the no animated would be changed to electrically activated. And that would be, no animated is how it is currently worded. And so we would recommend that it be electrically activated in that section. The changes on page 6 that I've put in red were recommendations from Clear Channel, and I would say those are just technical changes, and staff doesn't have any issues with those recommendations. On page 8, we changed the wording up under 14A. The removal of existing off-premises advertising displays located within any restricted area. It said the restricted area before, so that was just a grammatical change. Number 15 on page 8. Scenic Nevada is opposed in general to the special exceptions portion of the ordinance. They believe that the ordinance, however it's written, again, they're opposed to electronic billboards altogether, but they would like to see no option for special exceptions. Page 9, Scenic Nevada has requested that if there are special exceptions, that it be limited to only one item being able to be changed. And the, instead of 2, we have it at 2 right now. They're requesting that be reduced to 1 if there are special exceptions at all. Page 11 is the discussion. This is existing wording on the whole banking system. If you take down a sign, you can put it into the bank to relocate it at a later time. Scenic Nevada has requested or recommended, suggested that the banking system be closed, so no more signs can go into the bank. The ones that are in there now would remain until they're expired, but that no more signs would be able to be put into the banking system. And I think that is it. And then back to the changes on the definition that I covered earlier on page 18. We did hold a stakeholders meeting a couple weeks ago, and as I mentioned, I've met with various representatives from both sides over the last couple of weeks, received letters and emails, and this would be the ordinance that came out of those discussions with the changes that I've recommended tonight. And I'm available for questions.
Yeah, just finishing up, so the special exceptions, I think the other issue is, Claudia, so I just want to clarify, on the special exceptions, they're still allowed in those scenic corridors then?
They would be if you can have it, if you can request that be removed through the special exceptions process, which would come to City Council for approval.
Can we add that language to this ordinance, though, to eliminate
To eliminate that? Yeah, you would make
the
that.
special exceptions within those corridors?
Yep, you would make that change on page 8, number 15.
Okay.
And 15A.
And then the one-to-one rationale, this is what I'm really having a problem with in the ordinance, because I do think Clear Channel has stepped forward and recommended substantial, the 4 and the 8, which would eliminate the billboards in that area. But right now, the one-to-one, what are the little companies giving up? It's the status quo.
It would be.
So, I mean, on one hand, we're hearing testimony from Mr. Saunders about it's not fair to the small businesses, but on the other hand, Clear Channel is taking more boards down. So how is this ordinance a level playing field? Because what are they giving up with the one-to-one?
I would say in the one-to-one, there's really nothing being given up. You're not going to see any reduction with the one-to-one. If a sign is existing and it meets all of their standards, height, location, spacing, everything, then they would be able just to switch that with a building permit to an electronic.
So essentially, that wouldn't reduce in those areas where they own those signs?
Correct, it would not reduce it at all.
Okay, so what's the logic behind that then?
The ordinance really focuses on if any signs are reduced in the focus areas and the restricted areas that are mentioned on page 3, number 5. So the DRRC, 4th Street, Todd, Mill Street, Medical, and the South Virginia Street in the Midtown District. So it
But
really
only
focuses.
Clear Channel owns, is that correct? Only Clear Channel owns signs in those locations?
They own the majority. They do not own all of them, but they own the majority of them.
Okay, can I hear from Clear Channel on that? I would like to know how many signs are owned in those corridors. I mean, is it the majority of them?
In terms of numbers, I would
Yes.
say there's a substantial, I think going back to kind of how this conversation came full circle, the idea with the 4-to-1, and we would have the, we would have the 4-to-1 in these areas, and then if you couldn't meet it, then you could go through a special exception process and receive consideration. But I think in terms of numbers, what you're going to see within the primary corridor, which is, this whole downtown district that basically goes from I-80 south to Moana, and then from about 390, just east of 395 over to Keystone. Those are primarily a lot of the smaller poster structures, like you see on South Virginia in the Midtown area. And so I would say in terms of sheer numbers, we're probably 30, 40 along those lines.
And then, Aaron, while you're up there, what's the industry standard on the exchange ratio from a standing billboard if it converts into digital? And I did ask this question the last hearing as well, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not sure the information was totally accurate, so I'd like clarification on that.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't know that it's necessarily an industry standard, but I think you're referring to a Clear Channel employee who was asked the question from a national perspective, what is the average that Clear Channel sees from an exchange rate, and that number is 3.5 to 1. And that's only speaking on behalf of Clear Channel specifically.
Is that person still an employee?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's 3.5 to 1, Aaron, in the other jurisdictions. Does that include banked receipts?
Yeah, and to be clear, that's not everywhere. That's just kind of a national average within the 40 markets that we work in across. And what we typically see is, honestly, there's really no set. We tried to, in offering up the banked receipts, we tried to kind of mimic some of the other jurisdictions where a higher exchange rate on banked receipts versus takedowns. But I think based on the conversations that we've had, the desire is from the council to ultimately reduce that number of banks. So we just threw that number out there to try and accelerate that process.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Follow up on that, Mr. Mayor, while he's up there. Yeah, Aaron, when you say it's 3.5 to 1, not every market has an exchange rate.
No, and that's where I'm trying to draw that correlation between.
I mean, there's really not a standard across the nation right now. I mean, it's all over the board, correct?
Right.
I mean, you could pick 5 different markets and have 5 completely different ordinances.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And just the way that the question was phrased, our guy was trying to average.
But to say that it's 3.5 across the nation that'd be a false statement. I mean, and you didn't say that. I'm not saying.
Okay, thank you. It's an
I mean,
average.
it is. It's just all over the board depending on where you go. I mean, there's nothing that's a standard that's out there.
Right.
And there are a lot of destinations, a lot of places that have no exchange rate at all.
True. I mean, Sparks would be an example of, it's not specifically defined. You can do digital.
Thank you.
Mr. Guston and Mr.
Aaron, you might stay there for just a second. I would ask staff, but you may not have the answer. I noticed in Ms. Ray's letter, that she talked about interactive billboards. Is this just a case of semantics? What's the difference between a digital billboard and an interactive billboard? And
You know, I apologize. I wasn't privy to the letter, so I'm not sure. The only thing I can tell you is that there was concerns raised by Scenic Nevada in previous meetings, and we made sure to include within the operating parameters very specific criteria that allows for, let's see, under
you're talking about the motion.
904.
You're talking about the video and motion.
905N, yeah, on page 6, where it talks about each message shall remain fixed for a minimum of 8 seconds. So the implication has been that we can try and move these towards an on-prem sign that would allow for full motion video and things of that nature, and we've tried to very clearly prohibit that.
And that's kind of what I thought, but I'd ask the question, is that the way staff translates it also?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. I wanted to ask staff, I understand the position of the industry to upgrade their message delivery. Understand that. And we understand also that we're starting out with two groups that are diametrically opposed. So the negotiation and the getting to a point where it works for both sides be very difficult, obviously. And nobody's going to be ultimately happy with everything that's in there. Correct me where my memory goes wrong here, but when we first started this, we were talking about basically Midtown, the clutter that was in Midtown, or between California and Plum Lane. That was my interpretation. Maybe that's not true or not. So we talked about, the industry came with some ideas that if digital billboards were allowed, some of that clutter would disappear, would go away. And we talked about ratios from 4-to-1, 8-to-1, et cetera. And that is in here, in reading that, I do see the 4-to-1 replacement and 8-to-1 if it comes out of the bank. Am I tracking right? Is that still?
Correct, in those restricted areas.
Okay. And also referring back, and I'm jumping a little bit here to Ms. Ray's letter also about the banking, and you mentioned that. Is there still possibility that boards would be added to the bank?
Yes.
Under what circumstance?
If you're in a non-restricted area and you need to remove 2 signs to obtain spacing, the required spacing in the non-restricted areas, you'd be able to take one down, replace it with a digital, and then bank the other one.
And the bank is currently how large? Is it like 65?
Just over 50.
Just over 50.
Mm-hmm.
With the arterials and what we have, I can't ever see, but it's only my judgment, my own judgment, that those would ever be used anyway. So I'm not sure why adding to the bank makes any sense, first of all. Just throw that out for the council to think about, maybe ask other questions of that. And then the point, you know, I'm tracking with what has been negotiated and where you've come, again, considering the fact that you have 2 diametrically opposed positions to start with, and where we've come with a 4-to-1 and 8-to-1. And initially, that resonated with me because that area that I'm thinking primarily, which is in Ward 1, which I primarily represent the whole city, but Ward 1, and that clutter coming down, not that I'm a huge fan of digital boards, but that was a trade-off in my mind anyway, that I certainly could go forward with, put it that way. But when I get to the outlying areas, and Councilman Surprise mentioned this, and Councilman Dortch in another way, but the 1-to-1 still does not make any sense to me. I mean, if we're talking about, we have a bank of 50 plus that you're talking about here, and we're talking about just replacing the digital, a static board with a digital board. I'm just having trouble getting there at all. I can get to the 4-to-1 and an 8-to-1 because I think the feeling and the ultimate plan is that there's some reduction. You have to give on both sides, and both sides are willing to give a little bit here. So that's how you get to the middle or close to that. But I don't still get there with the 1-to-1. So maybe some further explanation to either qualify me as saying, yes, I agree, or don't, or still with my heels dug in that I can't get there. I'd like to have some conversation about that. And I understand restricted and unrestricted, but, you know, it's the Washoe County and Reno, it's Reno that we're talking about. So to me, it should be all in one basket. You're getting an option of, and it's true, and having been in the advertising business for many, many years, I understand, have purchased boards. I think they're a valuable commodity. I think they fit in a media mix, the people that are buying advertising for their plans for their business. I understand all that, but you also get a board that has 8 messages versus 1 message. And so to go ahead and continue the one-to-one, I just can't buy that at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Isaac, do you have some? Yes, come on up.
I just wanted to clarify on the discussion about the bank, understanding that right now the time frame currently is 15 years from the time that they go in there, and the industry had offered up in previous meetings to reduce that number. We still see the need for the bank, especially with the exchange rate, because our leases don't all operate under the same parameters. We still need some time in order to remove signs, in order to build them up.
So Mr. West, what you say, you see the need for the bank because of the 4-to-1 or 8-to-1 ratio.
Right. However, I do, the industry has been on record saying that the 15 years is excessive. So we I think, had batted around a number like 5 years, potentially even a little bit less. But to try and make it a little more.
5 years, they would expire then.
Yep. What's in there now, dates are set from here going forward, they would have a 5-year expiration date.
I understand your point. If we were universally agreeing that the 4-to-1 or 8-to-1 ratio, because I understand that you may need that because of the 4-to-1 to 8-1, but that's where my problem develops is we don't have that in all areas. We have a 1-to-1. So, okay, thank you. I got it.
Mr. Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like the Attorney's Office to address Mr. Wicker's comment about this being potentially illegal. I thought there was a lawsuit about this at one point.
The City Attorney's Office has recommended to council that they interpret this ordinance, because we believe it to be ambiguous as to what new billboards mean. In terms of the questions and answers that were placed before the community when they voted on this, and we recommended that you look at this as if it has a total cap. In addition, when you take one billboard down and put up another billboard, we recommended that you consider that the same billboard, even if it's been moved, it is the same number of billboards. So we were talking about the initiative essentially capped the number of billboards in the city of Reno.
And was there a lawsuit about that? Didn't that go to a judge?
No, the lawsuit was on another issue. It was not a determination of how to interpret that.
Because Mr. Wicker's correct, we do get sued a lot regarding, yes, sir. Would you come up?
Come up to the microphone, Mr. Wicker.
The City Attorney's Office has said that they would feel that the term new billboards is ambiguous. I would propose to the council that the term may not issue permits for their construction is not ambiguous. Furthermore, in the discussions about the ordinance as it was passed, in the rebuttal by opponents, in other words, by the rebuttal by the billboard industry, stated as follows. The proponents of this initiative are incorrect when they state that the initiative will merely place a cap on the number of billboards allowed in Reno. I would submit that that's not what we said. But then they went on to say, the wording on this initiative specifically prohibits building permits for any new billboards. That was the industry's interpretation at the time this was passed, and I think that is enlightening that they saw the ordinance as meaning that there would be no new billboards, no relocations, no digital billboards, et cetera. Thank you for letting me tell you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a personal note on that one, I'd like to iterate to Mr. Wicker. What I've been told, there's another publicly elected person here, and that's the city attorney. And we've been told if we don't take the city attorney's advice on these things, we're held personally liable to things like that in any lawsuits that happen. So that's why we elect the city attorney to give us that information. I just wanted that as a side note. For staff, on number 5, I just want to clear up some definitions for me. In the very first sentence, it says displays located within 300 feet of the center line or within the boundaries. What's the difference between 300 feet of the center line Does that just mean like along the Mount Rose corridor, 300 feet on each side?
Right, because some of these A through D, some are streets and some are areas. So 300 feet from the center line of 395 or 80.
Okay, so if we're talking about Interstate 80 from Robb Drive to the western city, that just means 300 feet on either side of Interstate
Correct.
80, from the center line of,
80,
right in the center of all four lanes.
right.
So it's probably only about
Or
200 feet.
we would look at the right of way, sometimes it's shifted to one side or the other, but we would take the center of that and go 300 feet either
Center
side.
of what, exactly?
Of the right of way.
Of the total right-of-way, okay.
Mhm.
And sometimes that right-of-way, I would guess, is probably 200 feet wide in some of those areas. So they'd be
Probably.
maybe 200 feet away from the freeway.
Right.
And they can be
Mhm.
further than that if they get permission from a landowner, correct? So I just want to clear that up because I'm not sure.
They have to be within so many feet from the right of way also.
Okay.
There's a narrow little window there where they can get in there. And bringing that up, I would, if this stays in, I would clarify that that's right of way. It just says Interstate 80. I would clarify
Okay.
that should be right of way.
And then, for instance, on A, I think there could be some confusion here because the city limits sort of cross over Interstate 80 at times between Robb Drive and the western city limit. So I don't know what that means, the first city limit, or the second city limit, or the third city limit.
I would go with the furthest.
I would think the westernmost border of
Yeah.
the city of Reno along the I-80 corridor, so it's a little clearer.
Mhm.
And then I think that, I'm not sure on 10, I understand the difference between any off-premise and 10 is the digital, but we're distinguishing between Interstate 80 west of Garson and then Interstate 80 between East Verdi and Robb Drive. Couldn't we just leave the same area for both of those? I don't know what the difference is between Interstate 80 west of Garson Drive goes how far west?
West of Garson Drive would be from the Boomtown on-ramp westbound to just past Gold Ranch.
To the,
State
so I mean, I
To
think it
almost
should be
state-
the
almost
same,
state line, yeah.
the same definition as the one previously. I don't see why there's,
The difference on that is on number 5, it caps it west of Robb Drive.
right?
On number 10, it does allow them in the Boomtown area.
And I'm just talking about the part that just says Interstate 80 west of Garson Drive. It doesn't say, I mean, I could say to the Pacific Ocean. It should just say to the westernmost boundary
Oh,
of
I
the.
see what you're saying.
You see what I mean?
Sorry, I see what you're saying, yes.
And then Interstate 80 between East Verdi on-ramps. So what we're doing here is we want to allow them at Boomtown. So
Right,
that
there's-
would be between Garson Road,
And the Verdi exit,
and the Verdi
where that
exit.
little industrial park is.
Now, and how far is that? So how many digital billboards could be placed there with a 1,000-foot separation? Because there already is one there, correct?
There's a Tri-Vision there right now.
There's also a digital, that sign that Boomtown has now, is that considered a digital billboard?
We're
under
reviewing
this?
that one right
But I
now.
mean, would that type of a sign with the, is
That
that
was
considered a digital
that-
under these definitions?
It is digital, but that was constructed as an on-premise. And then there's been some boundary line adjustments, so we're tracing the mapping history on that one.
But under this, the definitions here, would that be considered an electronic bill?
That would be an electronic board.
Okay.
Yes.
And then on 14, then we get to that. Explain to me what C means, a combination of A and B above accomplishing an equal ratio. C on 14, page
Page
8.
So that would be 2 banked for every 1 existing. So you could do 4 existing, 2 existing, and 4 banked.
But could you then also do all banked, if it's a combination?
Yeah, because that would be under, wherever we have 8 banked.
Because I thought our discussion
B.
before was it has to be 4 times for banked, correct? No, 8 times for banked and 4 times for existing.
Correct.
And a combination of A and B above I want to put up a billboard, 2 billboards. I can do 16 of the banked. I'd have to use that.
No, you would do eight banked or 4 existing.
Or 4. I understand the 4 or 8, but I don't understand the equal ratio.
Okay, so so for every, make sure I get my ratios right here. For every 1 existing, it would be the equivalent of 2 banked. Does that help?
If I only had 4 banked receipts, then I could satisfy half the requirement, which would mean that I would have to go take down 2 signs in order to
Okay.
satisfy that requirement.
Okay. But does it also allow you, if you have 16 banked, you could use all banked and you wouldn't have to take down any?
Correct, you could use 8.
No.
You could use 8 banked.
Up on that? Except in the restricted areas, correct? They can't use all banked in the,
Well, no, that's part of the problem with the ordinance. And one of my comments was going to be, we should have some kind of a waterfall where you go to your existing first.
Okay.
If you don't have any existing, then you go to your banked.
So I understand what that
So we
means
go to existing
now.
first.
But I don't know if I agree with it, but I understand.
Can I maybe clarify? I think in the conversations, because this has the potential to get very confusing very quickly if we start talking about do you have to take them down first or use the bank, and depending on expiration dates of leases and everything like that. What was ultimately discussed, in the interest of, at the end of the day, you're concerned about South Virginia, Wells Street, these corridors within the restricted area. What was discussed is that because of the spacing within those areas, if we want to convert one of those signs, we're going to have to take down numerous signs anyway just to satisfy the spacing requirement. So since that's implied, we're already going to have to do that. Let's try and keep the ordinance as simple as possible. The other thing is that this actually encourages us to consume the banked boards as quickly as possible so that then those are off the table and then we can focus.
Well, I know that's what you want to do, but I'd rather reduce the clutter as quickly as possible. So I think that's the issue.
And I would attest that will happen just based on spacing alone. Just based on spacing alone, those structures are going to come out.
But then you'd be satisfying the 4-to-1 requirement.
Right.
But if you're going to have to do it anyway, then you're going to be taking down an existing sign which you can't put back up, so it'd be applied against the 4-to-1 if you're going to existing first. And I understand the lease, but we can work something out. I don't want you to violate your lease, but at least when that lease runs out, you would have to take down that existing sign.
And keep in mind too that the way that this is written, if we take anything down to meet spacing requirements, those are taken off against the that cap as well. So it's not like we can take it down to satisfy that requirement, use banked receipts, and hope to put it up again.
Understood.
If we take it, so if we take it down to satisfy spacing requirements, it's gone, and that cap is reduced. I guess in the interest of just trying to keep this as simple as possible, what I would attest to you is that the banked receipts are going to be consumed in the higher profile locations. These, especially at an 8-to-1, these are going to go very quickly, and they're going to be used in the interstate corridors. And then from there, we will start looking at opportunities to do digital in some of the more congested areas and look at the takedowns associated with it. And since it really only applies to us.
Well, maybe.
Those are all my questions right now, Mr. Mayor.
But sometimes when I think you're not going to go down Virginia Street, take some of them down, I don't like that at all. Mr. Ashef.
Yeah, that was going to be my first question. We really don't have a priority or a waterfall that says, look, if you put one digital up, you go to your existing first. If you don't have any existing, let's say, in that specific restricted area, then you would go to your banked. We don't have that lined out in this ordinance.
Correct, we don't, but that is something you could add.
And then on the unrestricted areas, when you pull an existing sign down to put up a digital, because it's a 1-to-1 ratio, then that sign that comes down goes into the bank under this ordinance? Or
No, you would be replacing it with the digital.
correct, but because you pulled it down, it does not go into the bank, correct?
Correct, you would be that is the one you're exchanging
Correct, because I
for it.
thought I heard you say that once you pull the existing sign to put up a digital, it then goes into the bank, but that's not the case.
If you were taking down multiple signs, so there's some places where if they wanted to put one up and you couldn't meet spacing, they might have to take down 2 signs to meet the
Correct.
spacing.
Then one of them
One
would go.
goes back up and the other one would go
goes
into the bank.
And that's the way it works in the unrestricted area.
Correct.
And how about the restricted area?
Restricted area, if you would have to take down the number for the ratio, so you would have to take
Correct.
down, say,
Different
4
standard.
existing
Right.
signs. One sign goes back up, the other 3 go away, they don't go into the bank, and the cap is reduced in that area.
So if the ordinance was changed that said if you put up a digital, and because you have to take down 2 signs, you can't bank any of those signs, how many signs are we talking about that would come down in the unrestricted area? Do we have any idea?
It would be so hard to determine that, because you'd have to look at the spacing for each and every sign
But
to
I
see
guess
what
the
they'd have to
question
take
is,
down.
the question is, how many signs do we have that currently violate the 1,000-foot spacing requirement if they wanted to put one digital and they actually had another existing sign within 1,000 feet? We don't have any idea. I don't see that as being a lot of, that would be an infrequent situation.
It's
correct?
infrequent. A lot of them are right at the 750 because they're static boards now, and they're at 750.00. They're very, very close. So I would say in some places somebody would have to take down 2 to get a sign up, but that would just go into the bank, that extra one.
Right. But if the ordinance was changed that said you can't bank any of them that you put up as a digital, if you have to take them down to make the spacing requirements, are we talking about how many signs would be affected under that situation? Because we're only talking about the unrestricted area.
Right. Just looking at 395. There's 390. Here's 395 along in here. So you've got here, I'm guessing there's going to be spacing issues. There's a little cluster here. And then up in this area, there's maybe 20 signs in there.
And we don't have anything in the ordinance says, let's say you take down 2 existing signs because you want to put up a digital, you lose one and then one goes to the bank. Once it's in the bank, it can be used in a restricted area, correct? On the 8-to-1 ratio? Or can it only be
For a
used?
banked one. It
Right.
could be used as a banked one.
So once you bank that extra sign, there's nothing that restricts it to be used only in an unrestricted area?
Correct.
And then on the special conditions or exception, you can only vary 2 requirements, correct?
Correct.
And then there are certain requirements that cannot be varied, like zoning.
Correct.
So it's only the ones you list in the ordinance, 2
Right.
out of those.
Right.
And that actually is, where is it? What section? Oh, here it is. It's on my page 374. So that would be B 4 through 7, 10, and then N14 would be the only ones you could vary, and you could only do 2 of those, correct?
Correct. Yeah, 4 through 7, and then 10 was discussed. Councilwoman Sferrazzo mentioned maybe not having that one in there, but 4 through 7 is basically location and spacing criteria. And then the 905N14, A through E, and that's the exchange ratio in the restricted areas.
And then on the 5-year limit for the bank that was discussed, right now we have a 15-year limit. Do we
Correct.
have any limit if someone takes down an existing sign and puts it in the bank? Is that another 15-year period that starts all over?
It's 15 right now.
Okay.
But we can change that.
We can change that.
Oh,
sure.
right, right.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, that's okay, because that's what I'm getting to. I
Yeah.
was curious with respect to this digital board sign, if someone took down an existing sign, then they really have 15 years to basically use that bank sign.
Correct.
And then the other concern, basically when I read through Scenic Nevada's comments and what I've heard from the industry, and I do have to disclose that I met with Clear Channel, and I also met with, or I also talked to Mark Ray today on the phone. Under the other controls, the concern was that that was pretty broad. So let's say they come in for a special condition, and then in the process, the council basically says, we're going to change your flip time, we're going to change a variety of different things, and in effect, that section trumps the entire ordinance, even though they've met those requirements, simply because they're coming in for a special condition. Now they may have standards imposed upon him that are much more restrictive than that the ordinance requires.
That does open that up, yes.
Okay. Now, Scenic Nevada's concern was it could work in the reverse, which means under that section, somebody could come in and try to relax the code, but that's not the case.
You couldn't do that because that would be, the city council wouldn't have the authority to vary from the code. So it would be only those areas you can make it stricter through the special exceptions, but you couldn't relax the code without going through the variance process.
You have to go through variance, okay. And then there was a comment about best practices. I thought staff kind of looked at a variety of different ordinances throughout the country, trying to figure out.
We did, and I would agree with Councilman Dortch that it's all over the board.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
One thing that bothered me just a minute ago when you were talking about the signs along Interstate 80 and 395, my main concern is clearing up the clutter down Virginia Street and stuff like this. You're going to hit Interstate 80 and 395 and do those things, and Virginia Street's never going to get cleaned up. You're going to wait until you do it. So come on back up. You threw the apple out. Because I'm really not interested in.
And I apologize if that was the way that it was conveyed. I will tell you from our strategy, what we have looked at is we really don't see the need to use banked receipts in these downtown corridors because we will satisfy the removal requirement because of spacing issues. So we fully intend to move forward with a digital sign on South Virginia, and in the process, we're actually probably going to end up taking out extra signs because of spacing. We're only essentially we could leave an existing location and take out 3 others to satisfy the 4-to-1. Looking at this particular corridor, we would actually be converting 1 and having to remove 4. We'd actually be taking out a 5-to-1 and just to satisfy the spacing requirements. So I'm sorry if that's.
I took it that you were going to do Interstate 80, 395, and we wouldn't do anything down
and
Virginia
I apologize.
Street.
It was just
that really
merely
disturbs me.
Yeah, it was just from the standpoint of consuming banked receipts on the interstates because the congested areas, the signs are already too close, so we have to take them out anyway.
Okay. Staff. What about anybody, unless I went to sleep, nobody's addressed a question brought up by Saunders about the 750 and the 1,000?
So what they've requested is that essentially.
And they're mostly on 395, or?
I would let them answer where their signs are. The ones I know of are on 395.
We'll have Saunders come up and tell me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We kind of have a two-headed speaker here because I'm the attorney that's assisting them in advising them as to what this means as it's been presented. So if you need specific information on where these various...
I'd like to know where their signs are and why they want the 750 instead of the 1,000. Either you can tell me or he can tell me. Or neither one of you can tell me. I can make up my own mind.
We do have signs that are spaced, closer than the 1,000 feet that we would be interested in converting to a digital. However, originally in other meetings we have had asked that the language be changed to 750 so that we could actually use the technology that we're asking to use. Because if in some areas we wouldn't be able to convert. So what we're requesting here is not to change the digital spacing to 750 like we originally asked for. What we're asking for is to clarify that language so that we don't lump all the signs into the 1,000-foot spacing, because the way the definition reads now, you could argue that a static location is a manually changeable sign. And so we're just asking for clarification. Claudia mentioned, I don't know exactly how she worded it, but if you go to the definition of the changeable signs, I'm not sure what page that's on. On 18, we are not asking for that 1,000-foot spacing area to read 1,000 feet from electrically activated. We're just asking that it read 1,000 feet between the next digital. So from one digital to another digital, we're fine with it being 1,000 foot, but we do not want it to say electrically activated, because that pulls in a whole other group of signs that are under that definition. So we're just asking on, if you can flip back to page 5, in the spacing area, that it read no digital off-premise advertising display, and this is in E, where it says that Saunders had requested that 1,000-foot separation only apply to digitals. That is correct. We would ask that the language read, no digital off-premise advertising display shall be located closer than 1,000 feet to the next digital off-premise advertising on either side of the same street. So it's just a clarification so that we don't have other signs that aren't related to digitals spacing digitals out. And I don't know if that makes sense, but if you need more clarification, our attorney can address that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask Mr. Saunders a question?
Yes, sir. Why is up there?
You're in a dilemma in that you don't have as many signs as some of the other people here, and your signs are in the unrestricted area.
Right.
So when you were up earlier, you said that the industry has made concessions, and the problem I'm having, again, is the one-to-one change-out, which probably affects you more than anybody else. But, so, what concessions are you making, and how would you convince me that the one-to-one is where I should go when I look at the 4-to-1 and the 8-to-1 transfer, the 8-to-1 out of the bank and the 4-to-1 in the restricted areas, and you're in the unrestricted areas? I don't know. I'm not trying to put a hole in you, but I'm trying to understand your point and make it work for me that the one-to-one, who I don't think is the way to go, but why that would be something that I would change my mind in doing.
Well, if you remember, when we first started this, there was target areas. That was the word that was used. There was target areas that the city wanted to clean up, and we still feel like, you know, we agree with Councilmember Dortch that it's a land use issue, that if we take down a sign, we ought to be able to put up, for example, when we went from a painted sign, we were not asked to take down more because we were using vinyls. And so we just look at it as an advertising sign, and we're just using new technology. We're not really gaining more locations by using digitals. We can put up more advertisers, but I don't see why that should matter if we're able to improve our industry and make more money. I think that would be better for the businesses and better for our industry, and I don't know why that even comes into the question. But to address your point, I think the industry has addressed those target areas, and the fact that we're not in those target areas really shouldn't matter. We're still addressing the concerns. And so we kind of agree with, I guess, with Pierre Hascheff's idea that there's different levels of scenic areas, and it just so happens that we don't fall into any of those areas that should be restricted, if that makes sense. So we're on freeway areas, we're on high traffic areas, and I don't see any, personally, I don't see any scenic value on the freeways. I don't go to the freeway to look at the mountains. So I think it just makes sense. Those are areas that are commercial, and we should be able to convert our signs. I don't know if that helps with
I mean,
what-
that's your opinion, and that's what I asked for, your opinion. I would, my comments would be, you mentioned when you went from paint to vinyl, and I don't understand that analogy because that benefited the industry. You didn't have to paint the sign on location or paint it in your shop.
Right, and we weren't
But
asked to take down
well,
additional
I let you
signs.
speak, let me just let me
Right.
speak, okay?
Okay.
I understand that analogy of being the industry. It was, yeah, better for the industry because you could actually portray the images that were put on boards better for the advertiser. I get that part of it. But, so let me just ask you, and I guess this is a pointed question, is that the industry has made concessions, but in terms of Saunders, you really haven't made any concessions.
Well, I would say that from our requests, we're not asking for the 750 anymore. We're fine with 1,000 foot as long as it applies to digitals only, and because that only makes sense. I mean, currently the statics are governed under 750 foot spacing. Originally, we were asking for 750 for digitals as well.
Okay.
So we did make a concession there, and we just honestly, I guess I don't know why we should be asked to give up part of our business to be able to use a new technology.
And one last question. How many boards do you have in this market?
We have 7.
7.
I thought it
So
was 12.
it's very, well, we have 7 that are up. We have some banked receipts as well. And so it's very difficult for us to move things around and to offer up anything really, because
Okay, thank you.
it's a economic hardship. That's the bottom line.
No, we're using these banked in these different zones, right? Or you can't use banks.
You can use, it's an 8-to-1 for banked in the restricted, and then it would just be a 1-to-1 ratio in the unrestricted. So if you had an area that met spacing, you could use a banked receipt to construct one. And to further expand on the 750 and 1,000 that Mr. Saunders was just explaining, we've always considered in the past tri-visions to be animated, and that's where the 1,000 has come in the past. So if we were to change the definition, as they've requested, it would be considering tri-visions the same as static now. So that would be the change there. So if they had a static board that didn't meet the 1,000 feet, but met the 750, other way around, sorry, it would be considered a static board rather than an animated board.
And if we're trying to get more billboards down, why are we allowing to use banked?
Why are we allowing them to use banked? It decreases the amount in the bank, which has also been direction to focus on that as well.
Yeah, we pretty much told staff that there had to be some kind of increased ratio when it came to banks.
Right.
At least we had in our past public meetings.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Mr. Fries, you got another question?
Just one last question for Claudia. Do some jurisdictions ban digital billboards completely?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. George, you got anything? All right. Mr. Guston, you got anything, other questions right now? Mr. Azzi, any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Frazen, any questions right now? Mr. Hashef?
Just comments. I think at the table, we need to have some discussion about, how do we have some kind of priority when you have to remove existing versus bank receipts. I'm comfortable with the special exception, at least personally, because we've limited it to 2 requirements, and then some of them can't vary. So I think, I'm sure it'll get tweaked over time as we kind of go through this process. And then, similar to Mr. Guston, I think there's some way we need to address the unrestricted area with respect to the banked receipts. I don't know what the answer is, and I think we all should put a limit on when you can use the banked receipts, because right now it's 15, and that's a pretty long period of time. 5 years has been suggested. I think that would be an option, so you've got to use the bank receipts, otherwise they expire. I mean, what we've talked about, if you're going to go digital and get an 8-to-1 read based on an existing static sign, then there's got to be some kind of meaningful reduction of the signs over the time, particularly in the restricted area. And I think this ordinance gets there. It's a lot better than it was when it came out of the Planning Commission. And I think the meetings basically flushed out some of those issues, and I think we're about 90% there.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I'm thinking that we're looking at this originally as kind of a tit for tat, the 4-to-1, 8-to-1. It's not an immediate solution, and I'm still not crazy about the 1-to-1, but changing the expiration period from 15 years to 5 years, ultimately, at my first glance at this for the community, wins in that regard, or that, again, for the, you know, you're looking at two sides, the diametrically opposed side, the industry versus the scenic Nevada side, is that if it's 5 years, and I don't see the rapid growth in the 5 years, I think that's the win on that side of it that counterbalances the other things that have been done. So it's not so much a tit for tat, but it also will help reduce that bank with a 5-year expiration. I would think that would be an integral part in going forward and approving this ordinance, if that be part of it.
I like the idea of 3 myself, but we'll go ahead and listen to the debate. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I guess what I'm getting hung up on is the 1-to-1. I don't see how that creates an equal playing field. And I haven't heard, again, any concessions whatsoever, and you get 8-to-1. And I do believe this community is different in the sense that you had a grassroots effort to take the question to the voters on the billboards. And I understand, I don't think digitals were even in existence back in 2000. So here we are with this decision. I also support those areas. I think the only way we get any kind of reduction in the cluttered areas is by doing that 4-to-1 ratio and 8-to-1. And I think Councilman Haschef, you bring up some good recommendations on that waterfall approach. But the 1-to-1, I still don't see how that's fair. We talk about lawsuits and litigation. How is it fair for one part of the industry to me, it's relative. Just because they have more boards, they're also taking down more boards. So how do you avoid litigation and say, okay, this part of the industry has to comply with this, but another business within the same ordinance doesn't have to apply at all? To me, that opens the door to potential litigation. But also, I just don't think it's fair. What are they giving up in exchange for the being able to have a digital billboard? And quite frankly, that's a privilege. Not all jurisdictions allow them. A lot of jurisdictions across the country don't allow digital billboards at all. So I appreciate the answer, the 3.5-to-1. But also, Councilman Dortch, you had pointed out before that it's different everywhere. Well, it is different everywhere. Some jurisdictions don't allow them whatsoever. So if they are going to be allowed, there ought to be some meaningful reduction in the amount of billboards, especially in those cluttered areas, Mr. Mayor. And I just don't see it being fair for one side and creating an equal playing field there.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Actually, it's the exact opposite. It does create a fair playing field. In the cluttered areas, the areas that we have designated as cluttered areas, we have said we want more reduction to clean those areas up, regardless of who's in there. I don't care if it's Clear Channel, I don't care if it's Saunders, I don't care if it's CBS, whoever's in those areas has to clean them up, and we've designated those areas as troubled areas. Outside of those areas, I don't care who's there, they all play by the same rules. And if we're sitting here at the table and trying to design an ordinance that requires Saunders to give something up because we don't feel they're giving up enough, I think we're going the other direction. I think now we are designing an ordinance that specifically picks on Saunders. And then I think you're creating some antitrust issues and some other legal issues that are going to come back and bite us. So I think the way the ordinance is written, it's not written now to say, hey, Clear Channel, you have to give us 8-to-1. It says we've designated troubled areas that we want to clean up. Whoever's in there, They could sell those boards tomorrow to someone else, and whoever buys them is going to have to live with the ordinance of those troubled areas. We've outlined those areas, said this is what we want to clean up. Whoever's in there has to abide by it. The way the ordinance is written, it's not biased towards anyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we could probably agree on one thing, particularly with both of you, is either way, I think we're going to get sued. So this will all get decided somewhere.
Well, I think based on what we've heard from the industry tonight, if we move forward, we're not going to get sued by the industry.
They're going to guarantee us that right now, that all the people here will not sue us. I'm not going to ask that.
No,
but,
don't ask that
but,
question.
I mean, I don't see a guarantee there.
No, but they've been on the record saying they support the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, on the whole thing here is I would like to change some of the, like I talked about before, just the definition so that it's clear, that everyone knows what it means. But I think what we talked about at our last meeting was not to have a one-to-one. That's what we did. A lot of us were saying we're not in favor of one-to-one reductions. Because there was two sections. There was the sections that were cluttered, but you could go look at the minutes of the meetings. It wasn't, we wanted something more than a one-to-one, because that's why we didn't agree with the Planning Commission. They agree with one-to-one.
I thought our direction back was take care of the troubled areas, and when you're looking outside those troubled areas, make sure that we're not creating a monopoly for one player in the industry.
Well, maybe that's just the way I interpret it. But for me, what we said was we don't like the one-to-one, and to me the alternative was we put in the special circumstances section that someone can look at that. So if we said, okay, it's going to be a 3-to-1, there's these special. That's why we put the special circumstance in. If we're going to go to one-to-one, then we don't need to have any special circumstances.
But we also had the discussion that would create a bigger problem. If we're going to treat, if we make that special exception area to the point where Saunders could come in and say, hey, because we only have 7 boards, it should be a 2-to-1 for us, but it should be a 4-to-1 for Clear Channel because they've got the majority of the boards.
Then let's take out the special sections portion.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, but that's what But that's what I recall the discussions here going forward was, we didn't like, for the most part, the one-to-one, we wanted it more, but to get around that in some areas, for the industry, we would allow them to come back with the special circumstances to make some changes to that. So for me, I think the one-to-one is not what we talked about here at this council, and if the industry average is 3, that seems fair to me. If that's the average nationwide, and I understand there's a lot that don't require any, but for every one that requires 0, another facility has to require 7. That's the way averages work. So you could say, yeah, there's a lot that require 0, but there's a lot that require 10 or 7, to get that average up to 3.5. So by taking the industry's own testimony that the average is 3.5, I wouldn't mind just going with 3.
I mean, that's
I'd stay with 4.
That's one company in the market. And
the largest company in the market? Is it the largest company in the market who said that?
Well, they said they've got, I think you said 40 markets? That's 40 markets.
The largest?
Across the United States.
Has anyone here said that that's wrong except you? Is 3.5 wrong?
What's wrong with 4?
I mean, no, is what they said incorrect?
They said that it's there in their markets.
Right.
That's not nationwide.
In their all of their
in their 40
people,
markets.
The people in the room, I heard 3.5, and I heard no one in the room except you dispute that number. That's where I'm going, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Hashef.
Yeah, and to Dwight's point, though, I guess I look at it and I just take a step back. I mean, if the direction was we want to see a meaningful reduction, then you're going to have to give up more if you're in a restricted area, and you're going to have to give up less if you're in a non-restricted area. One-to-one. I mean, there's so many ways we can approach this. I mean, I am sensitive to Saunders because they don't have that many signs as well as the other sign companies. So if it's not one-to-one, it's 2-to-1, for example. I mean, that is going to work a hardship on them. But they don't have to put a digital up, and they can keep the existing signs. I mean, another way to approach this would be you just can't bank them. So if you have to take down 2 signs to put up a digital, then you can't put one in the bank. You've created 1-for-1, and now you just don't put it in the bank. You keep the 1-to-1 ratio, or you can go 2-to-1 ratio. But I mean, there's a variety of different ways. But If the concept has been, we need to see some kind of meaningful reduction in the number of signs, I think we're getting there, definitely in the restricted areas. And you want to take down existing signs before you take down banks, and you want to cap, you know, the number of years in the bank.
Yep, I see, I don't like the one-to-one, obviously. But I may be repeating something that's been said, but we've got the meaningful reduction, the 4-to-1 to 8-to-1. That's what we started off talking about that, and I think at one time it was 2-to-1, it was 1-to-1. And I think we've got it written in now with agreement with the parties that met, with a 4-to-1 to 8 and 8-to-1. And I maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on it, but I really think the difference and the thing that works for me is reducing from 15 years to 5 years. I think that's a substantial change, and you know, I can't forecast the economy at all, but I don't think there'll be a huge change. And when would that go into effect? Would that be things? Are there bankable boards right now, or we'd say as of what's today, July 18th? It's 5 years from now. Is
Correct.
that when it?
From anything banked from now on.
So that would change that.
That would change the 15-year to bring it down to 5, right?
For any future banked boards.
All the banks would come down to 5 years.
No.
For future ones, not the ones that are already in there.
The ones that are not already in there, they're not going to come down.
Correct.
Oh, so the 57 doesn't change to 5 years?
No.
It's just everything new?
Correct.
That's
That
no
doesn't
big
mean
deal.
anything then. Okay.
When do those that are existing start to expire?
Within the next 5 years, the ones that went in
essentially,
originally.
they're
Come
going
on
to.
up.
There were some that were banked within the last couple of months that would have 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that. We have numerous banked receipts that expire within the next 3 years.
Can you
So-
give me a number?
See, I think of it in terms of faces, not receipts, so I don't. But on the other hand, we have, like, with Moana Lane, for example.
Well, a lot of your banked receipts came down during the trench project, correct?
Exactly.
I mean,
Retrack and-
that's where you got the majority of your.
Yeah, the convention center. So, yeah, most of them are up against that.
What about Moana Lane?
Well, Moana Lane is an example where, working with RTC, we actually had to take down structures in order to facilitate the construction, and so we banked those receipts. Now, do we need, so what we're saying is, do we need 15 years to put them back up? No, that's where everything that's in there, I think, has a reasonable time frame that will accomplish your goals. I think it's just a matter of changing from here forward, you know, that.
So you'd say Moana would be part of Here Forward? Moana would be part of Here Forward?
If that's what we need to do, you want to backdate it a couple months? Honestly, I'm not terribly opposed to that.
Mr. Mayor, can I, on the Moana, were those paid for? Those were, RTC had to pay for those signs, didn't they?
No, actually, through agreements that we entered into with RTC, they didn't actually have to buy us out of the sign. We're working with them and relocating those signs so that they don't have to buy.
Still along the Moana corridor, or along the?
In some cases, actually, in order to meet spacing requirements, there's one particular location that we can't put back because it doesn't meet spacing. So ultimately, the number of boards on Moana Lane will reduce by at least one, and the rest of them will be brought into conformance.
Okay.
Let me ask you another question. Just out of, how many faces are available in the market? Do you have any idea? Or if you don't have a finite number, there are, I mean, Clear Channel and Saunders have been up here and representing the industry. How many players are there in the market?
Actually, CBS is the second largest.
There's 5 that have multiple signs, but then we have 16 miscellaneous signs that people
That's a
have a
onesie?
building. There just happens to be a
That's-
billboard on the side of it. They're not a billboard company. They just happen to have a sign on their
That's a
property.
onesie, the type of thing, you mean?
They have one. There's one on the side of a building. The one over going into Patagonia, over to Patagonia has their sign
Okay.
on it at Timber. There's that wood structure there. That's on our inventory. So there's some out there that were wrapped into the inventory 12 years ago.
Okay. I'm trying to make the, in my mind, trying to make this work for everybody. And so Clear Channel owns 80% of the market. Is that a fair estimate?
I think it's closer to 70.
70%? And how many of the 57 do you have in the bank?
we've banked on this was in the fall.
So
we've had that.
35.
35 was in the fall, so.
Yeah.
We've added some.
Yeah, we just added the couple from Moana Lane, so.
So 35, 37.
Well, actually, but
40,
we.
probably right around
Well,
40.
but we already pulled a couple out too, in order to rebuild on Moana, so.
Goes to
35 to 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's don't.
So you have 2/3 of the banked boards is what it boils down to.
And keep in
Okay.
mind, under the proposed exchange rate, that's only, that's 4 or 5 faces.
Yeah, for 8 for 1 would be 5 faces, yeah.
Okay, any more comments? I'm going to bring it back to the table, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hashef to see if he can structure a motion for us. How's that for putting you under the bus, Mr. Hashef? Short-termers are all that way.
Well, first of all, the motion would include the changes that staff recommended. It would also include Mr. Ayazi's changes, because I understood staff was okay with those clarifications.
If Mr. Hezzy could go over those again,
Okay.
that'd be great.
Just the definition, it would say, on 5A, Interstate 80 from Robb Drive to the westernmost border of the city of Reno along the I-80 corridor. And the same definition would apply to 10C. I'm sorry, 10B.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
How about the 750 to 1,000 feet that Saunders was talking about? How does that
That,
That was more of a definition change of what electronic was as
It-
opposed to changeable.
correct. Tri-visions currently are considered changeable, so that would,
So their
that would
change to say.
change their spacing. So
Their
right now,
change
they,
to say computer change would solve their problem.
What it would do is allow them to count, to include their tri-visions, correct?
changes their spacing requirement for what they have now.
So
The
they get more.
tri-visions could stay at 750.
Correct,
Right.
but they would then be able to replace the tri-vision with the digital. And the
Right
Well,
now,
then
they're,
the
right
digital
now they
would
have
have to go to
non-conforming signs.
1,000.
Right now, they have non-conforming signs. This would make them conforming.
Correct, but I want to make sure
But-
what the
but-
outcome is. That
So-
means that if we change the definition, they could take that tri-vision, pull it down, and replace it with the digital?
I believe so.
Not necessarily.
Not
Not
all,
necessarily.
not all of them, though.
Mr. Azzi,
So
you
we
had
couldn't put
something
it-
that took care of it.
Yeah, I think what they were concerned about was just the definition of what changeable was. And so they said if we just say computer changeable or something similar to that, that would differentiate between the LED and the tri-vision. So that the tri-vision could still be at 750, but if they still put an LED, they'd have to worry about the 1,000 feet. So it's just the definition of what the LED was and the changeable.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it would mean,
that is just to change the spacing, just to say digital to digital. That's the easiest way to do it.
Could you come up here for a second so we can, and just, what section was that in again, exactly?
It's 905E.
905E, the concept gets a little bit lost in the language, but the concept is kind of simple. And that is that under this, under what the proposal that we would make, all digital boards would be 1,000-foot spaced. That's that, and according to the definition that's been provided by staff, the digital, under their definition is the electrically activated, computer controlled. That's really, when we say digital boards, according to the way it's been defined by staff, that's what we're talking about.
So instead of animated, it would say digital.
It would say electrically activated, computer
Okay.
controlled. Computer controlled.
Now, let's
Well,
don't be
well,
talking,
it-
let's zip it back there unless you want to come up to the mic.
No computer-controlled off-premise advertising display shall be located closer than 1,000 feet to the next computer-controlled off-premise display.
Correct, correct. And the reason, as Mr. Saunders says, he doesn't want the word electrically activated because electrically activated is an umbrella definition.
Well, let's don't talk about what you don't want, we're talking about what you want.
Correct,
That's-
correct. So what we want is one change. 905E says instead of animated, because animated could potentially mean every sign, we want no computer-controlled variable message within 1,000 feet of another computer-controlled variable message, and all other signs are subject to 750. That takes care of it for us.
Okay, and I get that part. I just want to make sure from staff, what's the outcome? They still have to meet the 1,000-foot spacing requirements for digital.
Correct. Without that change, they don't meet the spacing. With that change, so they don't conform to spacing now.
Okay.
If we change that, that would benefit their signs and improve their ability to change to digital.
Okay. Even under a 1-to-1 ratio? Because it,
Especially under a 1-to-1.
right.
Because right now.
So
they
it
don't-
adds more digitals instead of reducing them. Is that the outcome?
Correct, because right now, potentially. So right now, if they have two that are at 750 and you have to have 1,000, they'd have to take down both of them
And put one in.
and put one in.
If
If
we
we
didn't-
change it to 750, they could change them both to digital.
But no, because this says the digital still have to be 1,000 feet apart.
That's right.
If we make.
Right,
this
I'm
change.
sorry, correct.
Okay.
correct.
No, that's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
To
But
me,
they-
the difference is, Claudia, is computer-controlled the same as digital in our definitions. I don't know why we're throwing in another definition. Why
No,
don't
no.
it doesn't just say digital all the time?
Right. So they could change one to a digital, I guess is what I was saying, because the spacing would be digital to digital.
Oh, I
That's
see.
where I was, that's,
I see the difference.
I said they were switching one, they keep one, and they can change one. So
I
they
see.
would, both signs would remain. Or in the other scenario, they'd have to take them
So
both
it-
down.
So overall, a digital can be within 750 feet of a non-digital display?
Correct.
Right now, overall, anyway, without this. It doesn't say 1,000 feet from any billboard, it says 1,000 feet from another digital.
Right, 1,000 feet between digitals, but you could be 750 from a static.
Okay. Now I see the difference.
Okay. So I take it everybody's okay with that change,
Yep.
right?
I am.
And then the next item would be, do we want to put a 5-year cap on any existing signs that come down and go into the bank from this point onward? So I need to hear from council members if they're comfortable with that change, because that was part of the discussion.
Why not just eliminate the cap then? I mean, eliminate the bank for the new ones. I mean, there's so many in the bank now, why not just eliminate the ones they have? And we can't go back after the 15 years, that'd be a taking, so why not just eliminate the bank on the new ones?
Well, the ones that are in the bank are stuck with the 15 years, and they're
Yes,
going to
right.
run their course.
So if we just eliminated the bank, they'd still already have signs in the bank.
So in other words, if you take down a sign because of spacing requirements to meet the digital, then...
Come on up, you got something to
I mean,
say?
that's...
Yeah,
that-
if you recall, the conversation was that in the interest of satisfying the 4-to-1 takedown rate, we were just looking for a mechanism that if it took 2 years to work through the expiration of the leases of those 4 boards in order to satisfy that takedown requirement, I'm fine with that as long as we have some sort of mechanism, and maybe it's just a building permit procedure that we identify the 4 that are coming down, and over the course of 2 years they come down with the idea that we get our digital. I don't know what that mechanism is, but I'm just asking for some consideration for it, a certain amount of time in order to get those structures physically removed in order to satisfy that exchange rate.
That can be done, right, Claudia?
Claudia?
So to make sure I understand, so if you take down an existing sign because you have to meet the spacing requirements, it could not be banked, whether you're in the restricted or the unrestricted area.
Correct, I mean, if the objective, I mean, there's so many in the bank now.
Yeah. Just eliminate the bank.
To allow for the contracts to run their course, I would say the 5 years is the best way to do it. If you're looking at establishing a contract or something, saying where it's going to be coming down, that's going to be, I would say, excessively cumbersome and challenging for the industry as well as for staff. So I would say the limited it to the 5 years or 3 years, as was discussed earlier.
But don't they have enough in the bank to do that, Claudia, already?
But for spacing, if they need to take some down for spacing, then, and they can, if one they can take down now and one is in a contract for 2 or 3 more years, then they wouldn't be able to take that one down.
Oh, you're,
Although
So they'd have 3 years to basically take it down.
Correct.
you're talking about the contract with the property owner?
Yeah, the lease.
Yeah, lessee or tenant,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay.
But doesn't that assume that you in this so-called waterfall, you'd go to the existing signs first, you'd go 4-to-1. If you have some by leases, they would take 3 years to run its course, and then you could go to your bank receipts. I'm trying to see how all this fits together.
And it's going to end up being probably a combination of all of these that we haven't even thought of at this point.
So if you have an existing, you got to meet the 4-to-1. If you have an existing sign that's not leased up, you can take it down, to meet the 4-to-1. If you have, in trying to meet the 4-to-1, if you have some leases that you just can't break, obviously, then staff would have to identify that, so when the lease runs out, that sign comes down even though they have their digital up. So over time,
They wouldn't be able to put that digital up until all the boards come down.
Correct.
So what they're saying is they'll take down the one when the first one when the lease expires, they'll take that down, put it in the bank, take the next one down when it expires, because they're not going to be able to meet the spacing requirements to put a digital up. They're not coming in saying, hey, we guarantee you we're going to take these signs down over the next 3 years, but go ahead and let us put up a digital.
right, but I guess maybe it's just a matter of semantics. Once they identify the 4 that they need to take down to put up the digital, if 3 out of the 4 have an existing lease and those expire, let's say in 2 and 3 and 4 years, they would get their digital, but they would have the agreement with staff in the city that basically says when those leases expire, those signs have to come down.
I
Correct,
think
we
at
wouldn't
that, yeah. I was going to say, I think at that point, you're complicating it in such a fashion. Now you're talking about entering into an agreement, allowing a digital to go up before they remove these other boards. The whole concept behind it is that they have to take the boards down before they put up the digital. So the 5-year period accommodates, gives them a reasonable opportunity to replace the board and accommodates their various needs with respect to these ongoing ground leases that they have.
But they can't put up the digital until they take down 4.
Until they take down the number that is
Because I don't want to
required.
see billboards increasing.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to have increasing billboards.
Okay, so then
And we're
the way
trying
to
to make
resolve it
so
is just a 3-year, yeah, once you pull them down, you've got, if you want a digital, you've got 3 years to remove the existing sign before you can put your digital up.
Correct. And I would say any sign that gets banked is 3 years. I wouldn't limit it to digital. I would
Okay.
just say any
Okay.
sign that comes down would have 3 years.
And we're trying to make this easier on staff so that you won't have so much interpretation to rules.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and in fairness, if they have to meet the spacing requirements and take down the sign, to meet the spacing requirements, that should count with respect to the 4-to-1.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and we would note that with the demo permit, we can
Right.
note that's one of the 4.
Okay. So that's the only, that's the only other changes, Mr. Mayor, unless I've missed something.
And then
about
the
the
1-to-1, I believe, was still being discussed.
The 1-to-1, that's where I'm hung up on.
Well, I'd like to hear comment on that. I mean, if they pull one down, existing one, and they can't bank, or they have 3 years to use the bank, doesn't that turns out to be a meaningful reduction?
I would say
And,
it's pretty, I would say it's spaced out on 395 or in any area. For the most part, it's spaced out, so if they're gonna take one down, they would just replace it. They wouldn't need to bank it. Okay, in some places, they may have to take down 2 in a couple places, in which case that would be banked and they'd have 3 years to use it.
So does that satisfy your concern, Dan? I mean, a simple approach would be just say 2-to-1.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Say that again, you would just say a 2-for-1 then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm charged with trying to craft the motion. I'm trying to get consensus on how we get to yes on this.
Go along
So
here.
I'm trying to get comments here so that once the motion is made, that it actually passes. So, but I'm sensitive to Saunders. I mean, and if 2-1 gets consensus, then I'm willing to put that in the motion.
I would support 2 to
I
1,
would,
because
yeah.
I think it's something.
I just need something, and then 2-1, because I didn't want to throw the whole thing out, because I think there's been some meaningful moving forward with the 4-1, the 8-1, and so that's a concession that certainly would make it for me.
Well, in some of the boards, you know, if somebody's across the freeway and they have a digital across the other side of the freeway, they can't put up the digital because you don't have the 1,000-foot spread.
Well, the 1,000
It
foot
doesn't
is
just
on
go
the
down
same
one
side
side of the freeway, does it?
It's same size.
Or down the
Same
highway?
side. Some-
You go down, if Clear Channel has one on this side of the road, and Saunders have one on this side.
Correct.
Now, Saunders can't do one because Clear Channel's already put one up. Now, they can't do one on the other side of the street. So you get into the, you know,
Yeah, it's either side.
Bar spacing and everything else.
it's yet nothing different.
That's the current standard.
Yeah,
It's either side.
okay.
So the planning commission changed to the same side, and now it's back?
No, that was just for schools and residentially zoned
Okay.
property, I believe.
All right.
Yeah, classroom buildings and residentially zoned property was
All right.
the same side. Spacing from each other is either side.
Okay. All right, so that would be part of the motion,
All right,
2 to 1?
2-1.
all right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to hear from Saunders on that. I mean, at the end of the day, again, you know, if we you know, we get into some kind of antitrust lawsuit, we're never going to see these boards on Virginia Street come down. And ultimately, we're going to continue to have what we have today, if we, you know, end up fighting
And
Mm-hmm.
them
the
on this.
difference between 1 to 1 and that is what?
That's what I'm asking.
We're going to continue to have what we have today.
That's what I'm asking. No, it's not. I mean, you'll see these problem areas get cleaned up. You know, everyone said that
Saunders doesn't have any in the problem areas.
No, I'm not saying that, but they do have the 2 to 1 has an impact on them.
Can I ask a clarification?
Come on up.
In the 2 to 1, obviously we're talking outside the restricted area.
Correct.
Correct.
Consideration for banked receipts?
Yeah, then they have
Correct.
3 years to use it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, could
Same
you
as it-
satisfy
Oh,
that 2
for
to
the-
1
you mean
with
with
banked
the-
receipts?
With
Because in
4
that
to 1?
case, I mean, Saunders has banked receipts, CBS has banked
The
receipts.
same as we have in the, then could you have like
The-
8 to 1 or 4 to 1
Correct.
ratios? That's what
I
he's
would be
asking.
in favor of that.
I'm just
4
asking
to
for
1.
clarification, because
So it'd be 2 to 1 with existing, 4 to 1 with
Bank
banked.
receipts?
I'm
Yeah,
just
to
asking.
keep it
Or
consistent.
2 to 1 with bank receipts
4 to 1 with bank receipts and 2 to 1 if you took one down.
and the restricted,
Correct.
And that would get rid of start getting rid of bank receipts.
but not restricted. Saunders, come on up, sir.
Thank you.
If you got a name, I'll try to remember it this time, call you instead
Mr.
of
Gilmore
Saunders.
is my name.
Gilmore,
But
okay.
you can just call me
I know the Saunders clan
Saunders
myself
guy.
very well.
The- Saunders' position is really this. When did this become about concessions? Did the city first come up and say, well, we're trying to allow businesses to advance themselves in the modern age, so let's make it about concessions. Everybody at the table has to make a concession or else the city isn't going to go for it. With all due respect, that wasn't ever the approach, and that shouldn't be the approach, and quite honestly, it can't be the approach. Because if the approach is a concession, then what you're essentially doing is levying a separate tax upon every different person who's an interested stakeholder, regardless of what their collective or individual stake is. You simply cannot work it that way. So when the council says, well, we want a concession from every stakeholder at the table, then you have to essentially levy a specific concession from each individual stakeholder depending on what they happen to have in their inventory or what they happen to have banked or what they happen to have up on the signs. So you could potentially fill this room with the little guys, and it's just Saunders that happened to take the lead on this, with little guys who have one sign, 2 signs. So the little guy with one sign now, who might have the ability with spacing and other things to be able to convert his standing sign to a digital sign. As soon as we go to 2-for-1, that guy is out of the business. That guy is out of the game. Because what the city council has said is, I'm going to levy essentially a concession from every one of you, and if you don't have enough inventory or you don't have the ability to hold up whatever we're going to levy from you, then you don't get to play at the big kid table. That's essentially what a 2-to-1 does. It takes all the people who are at the disadvantage because they don't have the inventory, and the city says, we're going to levy against you.
Mr. Gilmore, was this a publicly meeting? I mean, it's like the 40th meeting we've had on this. Are they here? Where are they? The public meetings are for them to come and address their issues.
Correct.
The question to you was Sanders' issue on this,
Right.
not you speaking for the public at large.
Okay.
That's why we have public meetings. They can come here and speak for themselves.
If it's a 2-for-1, because the city demands a concession, if it's a 2-for-1 anywhere, Saunders simply cannot get behind it.
Okay.
And
that's a perfectly legitimate statement.
And the reason is this. If the city council says to the industry, our goal is to reduce boards because we have too much clutter, and we have too much clutter in certain areas that we want to focus on, that directive should fall and let the chips fall as they may. Meaning if people are inside the corridor or they're outside the corridor, it's irrespective of what players are inside and what players are outside. It's not a matter of which players are involved. It's a matter of what is the directive of the city council.
And I believe that is what we are saying, because you said in certain areas there's too much clutter. And I agree, but that doesn't mean that there's not clutter everywhere else. It's just not too much.
Fair enough.
So what we've said and the public have said, what we're looking at, what happened at the ballot box was the people in this area would like to reduce the number of billboards. And I think what we're doing here gets us toward that end.
Correct. And I would submit to the council that outside of the clutter areas, with a 1-to-1 ratio, you still will absolutely categorically see a reduction of the signs along the non-corridor areas. You will see that as a matter of absolute, there's no other way around it, is the way I can say it. For example, if you, in the 395 corridor, which would not be under the restricted, there are just, in order for digitals to go up, based on spacing, based on other requirements for conformity, signs will have to come down.
Actually, that's not true, is it? Because the change we just made for you. Because the 1,000-foot is just between digitals. So you could have a digital, a regular, a digital, a regular, and not one side would have to come down, would it?
That's not what I'm saying. What
I'm
saying
asking if that's correct.
In certain circumstances, you're correct.
In every circumstance. If you skipped one billboard, your digitals meet the spacing requirements because they'd be 1,500 feet apart.
But that isn't the case. It isn't the case that the spacing works out that way. What I'm saying is if the digital were converted at 1-to-1, you would see a reduction based on the spacing. Not in every scenario.
If you chose to convert all of your signs to digital.
If that was even available, and right now that's not available in a lot of instances. But what I'm saying is a 1-to-1 ratio will result in a total reduction.
Only if you converted them all to digital. Otherwise, it wouldn't reduce it at all. Like I said, you could skip every other billboard, and you could have every other billboard could be a digital billboard, and not one would have to come down.
Yep.
I'm not sure if practically speaking that's the way it works. But
well, that is the way that works. Is that's mathematics. I understand you're an attorney, but that's the mathematical part.
But not every sign is spaced 749 feet apart, or every sign is spaced 998 feet apart.
But she said, our staff person said, pretty much they're 750 feet on the nose apart.
His signs.
But so if they're, I don't know what that difference makes. As long as they're less than, between every other sign, if they're 1,000 feet apart, you could put every other sign as a digital billboard.
I don't know that that's accurate.
Okay.
But the point is this. If the idea is to reduce the clutter, but also be able to provide a level playing field, the only way you're going to be able to do that is a 1-to-1.
And how does that, but it doesn't reduce the clutter. We can agree to disagree on that one.
Yep.
It does reduce the clutter in the target areas.
Okay.
And it doesn't disadvantage those who, whether they're here or not, have to sit at this table and are going to be basically run out of the business because they no longer have the ability to compete with the guys who have hundreds of signs and several dozen banks.
Okay.
So if we put the 1,000 feet back in, then that would eliminate signs.
It would eliminate signs, and it would eliminate other interested stakeholders who do not have the inventory from being able to participate.
I'm just saying, if we put
in
the
initiative.
1,000 feet back in, takes care of the equation you put together, because at 750, you could skip and put billboards, the digitals up.
Mr. Mayor, can we call for the question?
Can I
Yeah,
just
you
ask
were going to
one
just
more
say.
thing? Which might,
Yes.
you know, we talked about the restricted areas because we were concentrating on an area that we thought was overpopulated with boards. So we referred to that as a restricted area, and the other areas were the unrestricted area. What if the whole thing were restricted area?
If I could answer that, I think what we looked at restricted areas, because frankly, we had one company who said, we own all the billboards in there, and we can figure that out for you. And so it's easier for us to regulate. That's how come we got that area as restricted, because that company said, we'll agree to these things to unclutter that area. It wasn't overall. We had one company who said, we're willing to do that.
But then we've complicated by having a restricted and unrestricted. But what if it was all, everybody's talking about a level playing field. What if it was all the same?
Well, then that wouldn't be responsive to Saunders, because, you know, if it's 8-1 and 4-1, they're definitely out of business.
They'd be out of business.
So-
It'd be down to
Well,
2 boards.
and it's not personal with Mr. Saunders or anybody else trying to put them out of business, but they could be, tomorrow, they could buy somebody else and they could have 20 boards. I mean, we're all basing it on 7 boards and 5 in the bank, so.
And they still
bus-
get all their boards. This is only if they convert to digital. They don't have to take down one board unless they convert to digital. So tell me how we're taking anything away.
Well, but you're changing the market. I mean, it's by introducing digital into the market, you're creating a new method for advertisers to use. And by doing that, it might be cheaper for advertisers to advertise on these digital boards, and it takes away that advertiser that would go on a static board. So it could put, realistically, Clear Channel could come in, convert a lot of digital boards, and it could start putting guys that only have static boards out of business.
I agree that that's one of the outputs here. For me, it's the public. Clearly, I've heard they want us to try to reduce these. I don't agree with the attitude of just getting rid of them all, because over time, I think it will happen. To address one of the other public comments was the billboard industry is coming to us basically asking the public for a favor, because right now they're not allowed. So when you ask for a favor from someone, they want something in return. And that's, I think, what we're getting to here, is it's not a right to put them up, or they would have just put them up. They're asking us to change an ordinance. We say, fine, we'll do that, but our public would like to, we do this with all special use permits and stuff. We say, you want something from us, we want something from you, and you work out an agreement in the middle. And I think we came very close here. We made an adjustment for Saunders, I think, that will help them out in their digital stuff, going 2-1. And quite frankly, Dwight, we all know that it's going to come back in another 5 years probably for another council to deal with. We're not solving the problem right here.
Probably November.
We're just making some tweaks, and it'll get changed, because another technology will come back as soon as those hovering skateboards come out. It's all going to change.
If I could just clarify one statement.
Identify yourself for the record.
Councilman, in terms of...
You didn't identify yourself for the record.
Aaron West for the record with Clear Channel
Thank you very
Outdoor,
much.
and I just wanted to put out there that originally in the conversation of the restricted area, and we were talking about some very specific corridors, it appeared that Clear Channel did in fact own, all or the majority of the inventory within that section, and so therefore we agreed to additional concessions. I just wanted to point out that those areas have grown. So now
Okay.
I-80 West, 395 North, and the area downtown has grown to include so I just, at this point, I just want to say that I'm speaking on behalf of Clear Channel that we're okay with the additional concessions within the restricted area, but there are other companies impacted.
So let me
Claudia,
ask one.
how many 1-to-1s would we be looking at?
How many could switch?
Yeah, I mean, if you
1-to-1?
just went on the 1-to-1 that they were talking about in those areas.
Or if you went 1-to-1, but you couldn't
Numerous.
bank, if you
You
had to
couldn't
take
bank.
down a sign, you couldn't bank it.
1-to-1, you don't need to bank.
You don't need to bank.
But no, like Claudia said, if because of spacing requirements, they had to take 2 signs down to get 1 digital up. they could bank one of them.
But Pierre, that only occurs if there's another digital within 1,000 feet, which I don't think is going to happen.
Well, that's
I
what
think
I'm
you've still
asking.
got a lot of boards out there that don't meet the current spacing requirements. I think there are a lot of boards out there that wouldn't meet the current requirements.
There's quite a few. I mean, on both sides.
I mean,
It's,
again, we've gone around this for 5 years.
Yeah.
Why don't we just vote?
Let's make a decision.
Well, we're going
I
to,
mean,
let me just
we're in the
go ahead and-
minority, we're in the minority. Let's just go. I mean, we've probably heard this 40 times in the
Oh,
last
that's right.
12 years, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we're gonna make a
I've looked
decision
at
in
it,
just a
looked
minute.
at it, looked at it. I mean, we're beating this thing to death.
I'd say there's 20 to 30 in this section of 395, somewhere depending on
Okay.
space. It's hard to eyeball it on this, but I'd say 20 to 30 in the 395 corridor.
And if they don't meet the spacing requirements, that's why we have this special consideration in here we put in for them, to look into those things. Right? I mean, that's why we put that whole section in.
Sorry if I could just clarify, the special exception does not apply to the spacing. You guys have kind of already addressed the spacing. Special exception applies to if you don't have the inventory to remove, or if you want to go into an area that it is excluded. So,
But do you know of any signs that are less than 500 feet apart, 3 in a row? Because that would be your 1,000 foot. I don't know if there are
Basically,
many. So maybe one chunk.
the only area that I'm really aware of would be like I-80 right there at Keystone. There's about 6 signs that are, for the most part, everything down 395 corridor that you see is all 750 feet. Well,
Right.
yeah, those ones are, if you go further south, basically everything else is 750 feet apart.
Right, so we're talking very few.
All right, Mr. Hashev?
Well, I agree, we have to make a decision.
Yep.
So I guess the compromise would be it's 2 to 1, but it would apply existing or banked in the unrestricted area. So it wouldn't be 2 and 4. So they could use their bank receipts to meet the 2 to 1 requirement.
At the same 2 to 1, or would it be double that, like in the other area?
No, I guess I'm looking, it may not pass, but I mean, as far as a compromise for Saunders, they could use their bank receipts towards the 2 to 1.
Okay.
How many bank receipts are there?
They have 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can they buy bank receipts from the other guys?
They only have 7. If they use 5 bank receipts, they could convert almost all of them. So that works for them.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Based on that, I'm going to support the motion. I still have concerns about the impact it's going to have on the smaller guys at the 2 to 1. But we have come a long way on this, and,
Oh, Lord.
I mean,
If you make a motion to continue, I'm going to have the policeman arrested.
We already have a motion on the
I don't
table,
think
so
I've
we
ever been
can't
the
do
one to
that.
make
No,
that
that's
motion.
right, that's right. I have a motion, I have a second. One other-
Sorry to do this, Mr. Mayor. I just want clarification then, Pierre. It's still the 2 to 1 ratio.
Correct, and the compromise would be it's 2 to 1 whether it's banked or existing.
They could use a bank.
They can use a banked to meet the 2 to 1.
Not happy with it, but I mean, we're getting them reduced, so.
All right, I have a
And that
motion.
provides some relief. And to Jessica's point about we've been doing this for too long, yeah, but, I mean, we make a real effort to try to make sure when we do these things that people we don't put them out of business. So,
All right, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. At this time, we'll go to resolution.
Ordinance.
Excuse me, yeah, N12. Oh, wait a minute.
Bill number 68. N121?
N21? Yes, N21. Yes, N21.
Bill number 6809, ordinance amending the Reno Municipal Code, Title 18, Annexation and Land Development by adding certain wording to and deleting certain wording from Chapter 18.16 signs, off-premise advertising displays, and Section 18.24.203, 4570, definition of sign, to establish additional standards regarding digital off-premises advertising displays, including light-emitting diode LED, together with other matters properly relating thereto.
move to refer?
Have a motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, just one thing. I just saw the,
Wait a minute.
hey,
Did you have something to say, Mr. President?
I was going to say, one of the commissioners is saying that they want to reconsider the ballot question. So that was just posted, or, yes. So and I guess county manager's saying they can't, but maybe we should, I don't know if legal's looked into that, but.
Well, we're going to still show up.
So, yeah, no, I mean, for the 24th, but I think Commissioner Humke's saying he's regretting voting for that question, so.
Yeah, I'd heard
That
that.
was important, putting that out there. That's
Okay.
it.
Now, I have a motion to adjourn. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Those vote no don't count. The others were yes.